Princess Iona sits in the middle of the room, trembling with fear. She is noticed by a prince standing with a bloody sword over a dead body. He asks the princess what she is doing here, and concludes that she should be gotten rid of because she has seen too much. An hour earlier, a girl sits at her desk and is happy that she has finally finished her work. A delivery man comes to her and brings her long-awaited chicken. She is a writer of web novels and has just finished writing her novel, Traitor's Grave. It's a dark fantasy in which she left no room for hope or dreams. The novel was not a hit, but the girl at least managed to earn money for it and buy herself a chicken. And in any case, she's glad, because she wrote what she really wanted. When she picked up the chicken, her blood pressure went up and her eyes went black. The girl assumes it's because she's overworked in trying to finish the novel quickly. She begins to hear a voice telling her to kill him, and after finishing him off, to cut off his head and bring it back. A mug falls off the table. The girl is shaking with fear because she thinks there is someone else in the house. Her ears start to hurt. A strange voice wants to name the person to be killed, but she does not manage to recognize the name. She moves where people discuss among themselves the imminent death of the emperor and who will take the throne after him. The girl recognizes lines from her novel, The Traitor's Grave. She finds herself in her own novel. The girl falls to the floor, remembering that she never got to taste that chicken. She looks at her dress and hands and realizes that she is in the body of a princess, Iona Diaz. Iklit is the only princess of the Iklit Empire. She is the most beautiful lady in the novel. As a child, she was loved by everyone in the palace because of her looks. But as she grew older, she stopped being noticed. And it happened because at one ball, formed in honor of a foreign delegation, she interrupted an important conversation about solving the conflict within the kingdom, asking if it was about candy and what problems they have with it. Then everyone thought she was an idiot. The emperor was so embarrassed by the princess that he even ordered to lock her in a room in the old palace and make sure she never sets foot outside. The girl is not satisfied with the fact that she has become possessed by this particular princess, as her whole brain has become confused. She remembers that Jonah rarely left the old palace, and if she is at the ball now, then today is the day the emperor will die. She jumps up from her seat and runs to the other room to prevent the assassination, because if the emperor dies, it will be the end for Jonah too. After the death of her father, Iona is left alone, bereft of any support. Because of the political games that epitomize the dark side of her novel, she finds herself trapped in a burning castle and has built in a horrible ending. The girl hopes to at least save the emperor, because she is already in the body of a stupid princess. She remembers the secret passage to the emperor's room. Finding the statue, she grabs its wrist and the door opens. Even though she made it herself, it's creepy to go down the forest stairs. A guard runs after her, trying to catch the princess, but she manages to run out the door just in time. She finds a lever to turn on the light. On the way, she is very tired. The princess body she created is very weak for certain reasons. Through a secret passageway, the girl has entered the library. She goes to the emperor's room to check if he is all right. When she enters the room, she smells a strange odor. Looking at the floor, the girl finds the emperor's dead body. She was too late to save her father. The princess falls to her knees, and at that moment she hears a voice nearby telling her that she has seen too much and he will have to get rid of her. As she looks at the man's face, she recognizes another of the heroes of her novel, the cruel and ruthless villain who used the princess and drove her to her death. The thing is that the writer has endowed him with many abilities. One of them is mind reading. After reading the girl's thoughts, the man realizes that it is not Jonah who is sitting in front of him, and asks who she is and how she knows about his ability. Archduke Eynard Irvin Bonaparte, the brutal villain of the novella The Traitor's Grave, as well as the guardian of the young prince, heir to the imperial Bonaparte family. He is rich, intelligent, and incredibly handsome. He also has a strong influence on the imperial family, but his real specialty lies elsewhere. Eynard had a special ability that allowed him to become Archduke at such a young age. He could read anyone's mind. The girl tries to stop not to think about it, as she should not do so considering such abilities of Eynard. The man asks the girl if she is the author. Hearing strange noises from the emperor's room, the guards come to the door, and thinking that His Majesty is alive, ask if he is all right. The Archduke at the same moment grabs the girl's hand, saying that she will help him to return, and advises her to keep silent. They head for the secret passage, but not the one through which the writer entered the room. Eynard tells her that if she doesn't want to die, she will have to keep silent from now on. The guards run up to them and apologize for his lordship's troubles, and report that something irreparable has happened. His Majesty has just passed away. Eynard starts shouting at the guards, asking how this could have happened, because only in the morning he was told that he had regained consciousness, and what the guards were doing at that time. He orders to find and arrest the murderer. The guards ask his lordship if he has seen anyone suspicious. Eynard replies that he has been talking to Princess Jonah for quite a while, but no one has passed by them, and then asks the princess if he is telling the truth. The girl realizes that the Archduke brought her here to use her as an alibi, and if she reveals the truth, everyone here will be killed, so she confirms his words. In this case, the guards leave to continue the search for the murderer. Eynard asks the writer to follow him. As she walks down the corridor, the girl thinks about what she could have done that he asked her to, and why, of all the people in the world, she managed to get involved with the worst villain of the novel. Seated in a room at a table with cups of tea, the Archduke tells the girl that he wants her to answer all his questions, one of which is how she knew about his ability. He reminds the girl that she sort of told him about being the author of this novel. Not that he believes it, and yet he decides to ask another question. Does this mean that the world he lives in is completely fictional? The writer is completely confused. She wanted to celebrate the completion of her novella with a chicken, and then she was suddenly transported to this world. After reading the girl's thoughts, the Archduke replies that it is not in such a case that it really happened, and asks what will happen to him in the future. The writer thought that in the future he will die, forgetting that her thoughts can be read. Eynard asks to tell everything in detail from beginning to end. Immediately after the emperor's death, Crown Prince Armand will ascend the throne and become the new representative. Taking advantage of his power, Eynard will control the affairs of state, making Emperor Armand a puppet. But one day, Armand learns that it was Eynard who killed his beloved sister Jonah, and then the main plot begins. But after that, she remembers nothing and assumes that the Archduke was killed by Armand. But how exactly he died and what happened after cannot remember, although it was the climax of the story. Eynard points his sword at the girl and says that if what she says is true, he will not rest even if he chops her to pieces. So the writer would be useful to him if she knew the future, but she doesn't know it, so there's no point in letting her live. The girl asks to wait a bit as she will soon remember everything. After all, she is the one who wrote this novel, so most likely the knowledge will come back to her soon. She just needs a little time to remember as soon as possible, and will do her best to make sure he doesn't die. Eynard asks when she will remember everything. But he can't trust her completely, so he asks her to sign the papers on the table. The girl agrees without a second thought and hands over the signed document, mentally hoping that it is not a guarantee or a waiver, but in any case, she is glad to be alive. Eynard tells the writer that from now on, she is officially his bride, explaining that it will be a fetter that will keep her from escaping. She gives her 1 month to prove her usefulness, otherwise she will die. Thus the girl got into the novel written by herself and began a difficult and thorny path of life and death. She's sure she'll survive. The girl sits in a chair while the maids braid her hair and thinks that as soon as she remembers the Archduke's words, she gets depressed. Her luck has clearly run out on her, as she has met Eynard in the novel. She must find a way to remember everything within a month. At that moment, the maid roughly tugged a strand of her hair. They're being very rude all the time. The girl doesn't like this kind of hypocritical attitude. It's just unacceptable to behave like this to a princess. The maids left her room, however she would not let them leave. This is exactly how Jonah was treated inside the novella. Because of her naivety, she had been completely ignored by the maids all her life. She wrote it herself, but to feel this kind of treatment is horrible. Looking in the mirror, the girl noticed that her appearance was very nice, and she had really become Iona. The writer wondered if she would ever come back. At this very moment, she may be making the final edits to the book, or she may have fallen asleep in the process. She wonders how she got here. Come to think of it, before she woke up here, she heard a voice saying to kill someone and bring the head. That could be a clue. Someone sent her here for a reason. When the girl wakes up, she sees a lot of wooden arrows around her bed and is very frightened. A young man with golden hair enters the room. He says he was worried about her because she had not woken up, although the sun has long since risen, and asks his sister to be calm because he has already called the priest. Hearing the boy call her sister, the girl realized that Armand, the main protagonist of the novella, the crown prince of the Eichlight Empire, and the cute little brother who appreciates his sister Iona infinitely, was standing in front of her. The writer doesn't know Armand will realize she's not the real Jonah, so needs to watch what she says. Armand informs her sister that His Majesty passed away last night. Trying her best to play dumb, she asks her brother with a smile what that means. Armand explains that their father died and was attacked by an assassin who snuck into his rooms last night. The girl asks about what the assassin did to Her Majesty and thinks it's hard to talk like Jonah. The young man puts his hand over his sister's and says that when he heard that His Majesty was no longer with them, he thought of her first. He was afraid that his sister might be in danger too, since he had no one else left, and asks her to ignore all these things. And in addition to the fence, he promises to increase the number of guards just in case. Assuming that his sister is probably hungry, he is going to order the servants to make her breakfast. But he can't keep her company as he has a lot of work to do, too. The girl says goodbye to her brother and mentally calls Armand a fool who thinks only of his sister. The fact that now she has a kind, sweet little brother makes her feel better and makes her want to live with him forever. Before leaving the room, Armand tells his sister that he heard that yesterday she was with the Archduke Bonaparte. The writer notices that the young man's voice has become lower and replies that they did indeed meet when they ran into each other in the corridor. Armand warns her sister that this man is dangerous and asks her to try not to have any dealings with him. Left alone, the girl thinks that Armand hates the Archduke and will be very angry when he learns of her and Eynard's engagement. A while later, she sits on the veranda with the maids behind her and remembers that before Armand fell into darkness, she thought he was a sweetheart who thought only of his sister. But when it came to Eynard, his eyes changed. She doesn't want Armand to die, but she doesn't want him to have any reason to turn to the dark side. And to achieve that, she needs to survive at all costs. Eynard comes up to the girl and asks her about what she just said, and kissing her hand says their meeting yesterday was quite fun, and asks if her way to the room was safe. When he sees the maid standing behind him, he asks them to leave as he has something to say to Her Highness. The writer-wrestler asks the maids not to leave her, and seeing them whispering among themselves, realizes that soon the palace will be filled with rumors. She asks the Archduke what brings him here, and mentally hopes that he has not come to follow her. Overhearing the girl's thoughts, Eynard replies that he is here for that reason too. He thinks about it, and realizes that he doesn't like the rumors that he is engaged to a stupid princess, so wishes his fiancée would stop being stupid. The writer replies to the Archduke that she would love to, but her brother will start to suspect something. Eynard replies that Armand will die anyway, so there is no need to waste time worrying about it. The girl asks if he really wants to kill the prince. The Archduke replies that if he gets in his way, he thinks it is fine to kill him before the prince kills him. Leaning over to the girl's ear, Eynard asks her to make a happier face. The writer calls him a jerk in her mind, and immediately excuses herself that she would like to think so, but she needs to control herself. Eynard informs the girl that he will announce their engagement after His Majesty's funeral ceremony. There is not much time left, so by the end of the month, she has to make every effort to prove that she will be useful to him if she doesn't want to die before he announces the engagement. Even if the writer wanted to live a busy life, she is not yet able to change Jonah's current sedate lifestyle. She wakes up in the morning, gets dressed, looks for something to pass the time, and eats whatever is prepared. The girl never imagined that the life of a princess would be like this. But what else is a princess to do that even the emperor refused? The only thing she has planned is an afternoon tea party. When she tastes the tea, she immediately spits it out. A maid runs up to the princess and says she must have mixed up the sugar and salt and will go make more. Ever since she met Armand, the maids have become more blatant in their taunts, even though their goal was always to make the princess laugh. Yesterday, they had prepared ice water for the bath. But what angers her the most is not that they are being so mean, but that they can't express their dislike in words. Sooner or later, she will have to teach them a lesson, and the ignorant maids will be the first. When she notices the gardeners nearby, she wonders why they are so busy today. The maid explains that a delegation from the Vatican will soon arrive for the funeral ceremony of the deceased emperor, so everyone is busy with preparations. They ask the princess if she will leave her palace for the ceremony. The girl replies that she will go there too. With a chuckle, the maid tells the princess that it has been a long time since she last went out in public, and she has always been as aloof as a flower growing in a greenhouse. The writer gets up from her seat and goes for a walk. Behind her back, she hears the maids continue to discuss her and say that if the princess wants to pass the time, why doesn't she just go back to the palace? Sometimes she bothers them for no reason. Meanwhile, sitting in his office, Armand asks his subordinate if the criminal who killed the emperor has been caught. He is told that the culprit has not been found yet, but it has been confirmed that knights were guarding all entrances and exits of the palace where the emperor lived. It is not clear how the assassin managed to get into the palace. A subordinate worries about the fact that the Archduke has not been able to sleep well for several days because of his work, so he suggests that he take a short break. Armand firmly replies that he will not take a break. The young man thinks about whether he should ask about the rumors concerning His Excellency and Princess Jonah. Hearing his thoughts, Armand asks if the rumors about him have really started to spread recently. The subordinate, surprised that His Excellency already knows about it, asks if it is true that they are in a relationship. The Archduke responds by asking him what he means. The young man smirks and thinks that the rumor that His Excellency is dating this dumb princess is just nonsense. Noticing that the Archduke is smiling strangely, he asks Armand why he is smiling, because these rumors cannot be true. Armand asks his subordinate to stop talking nonsense and get back to work. After bowing out, the young man thinks about why this man is so harsh, and that no one else would agree to work with him if it were not for him. Alone in his study, the Archduke ponders that he cannot believe everything this girl has told him. He also doesn't know if she has special powers like him or not, and suggests that she might have the power to hide the truth. Iona Diaz-Iclet is a stupid and uneducated girl who doesn't fit the title of princess. Such an Iona disappeared and was replaced by an author who predicted his tragic end. Looking out the window, Armand sees Jonah with the maids and wonders where they are going. When he gets into the maids' thoughts, he hears that they resent the princess for going somewhere and think that dolls should behave like dolls, quiet and obedient, stay in their palace and keep to themselves. If she heads for the lake, she'll throw her right into it and leave. Armand concludes that the princess is neglected, even by the maids. Standing on the shore of the lake, the girl thinks that it is so beautiful here, and finally she feels free at the sight of clear water. The maids ask the princess to come up to them and look at the very clear water, through which the bottom can be seen. The writer decides to play along for the time being, and comes closer to them, and begins to admire the water, and supposedly looks for the fish they show her. And that's when the maid trips the princess, and she falls into the lake. Diving to the bottom, the girl thinks about the fact that she is now clearly not just tripped, and darkly, she realizes what Jonah had to go through all this suffering, because she did not even suspect that she was being abused. The maid started treating her like a toy. The writer understood what it was like, but still, drowning a princess in broad daylight in public is just awful. And since they had asked her to teach them a lesson, they would pay for it. The maids start to worry about why Her Majesty is not resurfacing. They are already thinking about calling the knights, when suddenly the princess's hand appears out of the water and, grabbing the dress of one of the maids, comes out of the water. The second maid runs up to the princess holding towels and asks if she is all right, and says that they were shocked when she suddenly fell into the lake. She hands Her Majesty some towels and asks her to rub them in or she'll catch a cold. Looking at these disgustingly dirty towels, The writer concludes that most of the time the laundry is not even done properly. The girl replies that she is fine and not that cold. She notices that the maid is also wet. She wipes her face with a dirty towel and apologizes for not seeing that there was something wrong with the towel. She asks the maids if she understood correctly that they were aware of it from the beginning. Looking at her hand, the girl notices that the ring she received from Archduke Bonaparte slipped when she fell into the water, and most likely if he finds out she lost it, she cannot guarantee the lives of those responsible for it. So she asks the maids to go and fetch her the ring. The maids ask the princess if she means that they should go to the lake. The girl tells them that she doesn't see a problem with that, and that since she went into the water, the maids can too. She forbids them to return to the palace empty-handed. Returning to the palace in wet clothes, she thinks about how disgusting she feels, and the maids shouldn't have assumed that someone who doesn't have much power will never be able to stand up for himself again. The girl is very cold. She shouldn't have made a scene of intimidation. When she looks up, she sees the Archduke in one of the windows. She's not happy that she has to show her face to that bastard. Even though she may look pathetic and worthless now, she's not going to live like this forever. She's not the Jonah she used to be, so from now on she asks the Archduke to watch her properly. In the meantime, his subordinate Michael returns to the Archduke's door and tells His Excellency that he has a report for him and allows him to enter the office. Once inside, he sees that the Archduke is smiling, which shocks him and makes him wonder what he is looking at. As he gets a little closer to his master, the young man notices Princess Iona in the window. He cannot believe that the Archduke is smiling because he looks at her and hopes that the rumors are not true. Eynard asks his subordinate what happened. Michael explains his visit by bringing the list of invitees to the emperor's funeral, and the cardinal will be on the list of invitees from the church. After looking over the list, Eynard does indeed see Cardinal Cesare Hagen Borgia among them. Michael says that perhaps because of the incident, he personally decided to investigate. Cesare Hagen Borgia is the next candidate for Pope and current cardinal. Recently, the disappearance of children, often orphans, has become more frequent in the empire. Initially, the high society did not pay much attention to this, but the number of disappearances has gradually increased. Since publicizing the case would bring nothing but panic, the knights investigated in the taiga away from the people. In order to move the investigation forward, it was decided to involve the church. A petition was sent to that slimy type. Eynard asks Michael to place the delegation from the church in a place far from nature and to begin preparations for the engagement. Michael is shocked by the order, and he asks the Lord whose betrothal he is to prepare for. Eynard replies to his subordinate that he will be betrothed to Princess Iona. The next morning, the writer wakes up thinking that she was worried because she was soaking wet yesterday and lucky she didn't catch a cold. A maid is standing next to her bed. After examining her, the girl asks where the other maid is, if she is looking for the ring. The maid confirms that she is. If so, the princess asks her to tell her not to come back without it. A worried Armand bursts into the room and asks his sister if it is true that she is going to marry the Archduke Bonaparte. The girl changes the subject, telling her brother that he has come too early and that at his age the body needs a healthy sleep. Armand replies to his sister that sleep is nothing compared to what is happening, as the Archduke is dangerous. The princess realizes that now she will not be able to change the subject. Armand explains to her sister that the Archduke Bonaparte may appear at first glance to be a gallant gentleman, but in fact he is a treacherous man whose thoughts are impossible to predict. Compared to others, his ambition is boundless. He craves power. The title is not enough for him, and sure, he is aiming for the imperial throne. He cannot be trusted. He is a traitor, so you should never mess with him for anything, much less marry him. Armand asks his sister to tell him that this is a lie. The princess explains to him that she has already signed the contract and thereby agreed to the engagement, and when asked by her brother if he forced her to do so, she replies that she signed it herself and knew that it was an engagement document. At this point, she thinks that she was actually forced and did not know it was an engagement document when she signed it. The prince, angry, leaves and tells his sister that he will talk to the Archduke himself. The girl begs him not to give it, but she has no success in stopping him. The writer realizes that this is to trouble, and she does not know what to do in case Eynard kills Armand. If the Archduke is going to throw something out, the mob is unlikely to stop him. Heading towards the Archduke's study, Armand thinks it's all a lie. His sister says she agreed to the engagement, but Bonaparte has probably used some kind of ruse and wants to use his innocent and pure older sister in his treacherous plans. The prince promises that he will not give up his precious sister to such a brazen man. Armand abruptly opens the door to the Archduke's study. Eynard asks the crown prince what business he has come here for, and after a short silence, he asks him to follow him into the drawing room. Armand answers him that there is no need to go anywhere, and he will say everything here. He demands to cancel the wedding with Jonah immediately. All through his childhood, Armand had been told that he was not endowed with any extraordinary powers, or that the future of the Iclith Empire was in his hands. Iona told him not to worry about what people were saying, and distracted him with various games. Armand loves and cherishes his sister most of all, so he made a promise to himself to protect her as much as she protects him. Eynard replies to the prince's request to cancel the marriage that it is impossible, and does not think it is worth talking about it standing up. So he instructs him to go into the drawing room and drink tea while talking. Armand notices how nonchalantly the Archduke acts, as if he had been expecting his arrival and had prepared himself in advance. It is impossible to be relaxed around him for a second. The prince tells Eynard that in case it is not necessary, and asks him to explain why he cannot cancel the engagement. His sister is pure and innocent, so he asks the Archduke to end it all if he is going to use her to accomplish his goals. Eynard asks if it was Iona who told him to say that. Armand replies that his sister did not tell him anything, and he is here solely on his own initiative. Eynard explains to the crown prince that he and the princess have already decided that they will seal their fates. The engagement was notarized, and the princess personally signed the document after reading it carefully. Armand suggests that perhaps her sister signed without knowing it was an engagement document. The Archduke replies that it is only his business with Jonah, and therefore, despite his status as crown prince, he is superfluous. Armand clenches his hands into a fist and asks him about the motives behind the engagement. Eynard responds by asking the prince if he doubts the sincerity of his actions. Armand explains his actions by the fact that the Archduke has never had an affair with his sister, but for some reason he speaks of sincerity, so it is hard to believe that he feels anything for her. Eynard mentally calls the prince a child, because he rushed to save his sister without even being able to curb his feelings, so he is unlikely to get anything from him now. He tells the prince that he didn't know he was so bad in his eyes, and yet feelings between a man and a woman can appear in an instant. He thinks that compared to the crown prince, the princess will be more useful, which is the whole motive. And since the prince has well enough reasoned his request, and has nothing more to say, he informs that he is forced to leave. Because of the funeral of the previous emperor accumulated a lot of postponed work, as well as intends to go to visit his unattractive bride. With his head down, Armand thinks that this is a complete nonsense and what the Archduke is really up to, as he thinks he was going to make a puppet out of him and become a puppeteer, ruling the empire. So why he does not let his sister go? What kind of crown prince is he then? Just an inept teenager who can't even protect his sister. Meanwhile, the princess is in her room, pacing from side to side, wondering if Armand is all right. Even if the Archduke is a villain, it is an atrocity to kill the crown prince. But remembering the day she came here, she realizes that the Archduke is definitely capable of such a thing, for he killed the emperor without blinking an eye. A maid enters the room and tells the princess that she has prepared water for her bath. The girl notices that the atmosphere is different. It seems that the maids have come to their senses. She asks the maid how the search for the ring is going, and reminds her that she asked her not to return until they find it. The maid explains that they have searched the entire lake, but found nothing. The princess reproaches them for daring to ignore her orders and show themselves to her. At that moment, she thinks that the ring was not there in the first place, so they did not find it, but the change has come. They have finally realized their place. Following the maids, Eynard enters the room. The princess asks him why he has come at such a late hour. The Archduke apologizes, but some rumors have reached him, so he came as soon as possible. He has heard that the princess lost the ring he gave her in the lake. The girl apologizes to him for this, but immediately realizes that there was no point in apologizing because there was no ring to begin with. Armand continues to talk about the disappearance and adds that he is horrified that the princess is in danger and he would like to know what the maids were doing at that moment. In that case, he has to punish all the maids present and get them out of sight immediately. Without letting the princess say a word, Armand puts on a ring with a red ruby and notices that Her Majesty is quite thin, as the ring has become too big. He kisses her hand and asks her not to take the ring off, because you can't lose something so precious twice. The Archduke wishes the princess goodnight and leaves the room. Left alone, the girl mentally calls the Archduke a bastard for having pulled off such a mind-reading performance. But in any case, she is glad Armand is alive. The next morning, the princess wakes up and sees the new servants in front of her. They greet the princess and say that from today, they will serve her. One of the maids introduces herself as Dorothy and explains that they were sent to her by Armand Bonaparte. She is very happy that she will serve Her Majesty, and it is a great honor for her. The princess realizes that it was just a ruse to have her followed. Dorothy does not appear in the original novel, and since the writer did not introduce such a person in the story, she decides to follow her more closely. As a result of her surveillance of Dorothy, she only noticed that she is very caring and kind. She wakes up the princess with compliments, is happy that Her Majesty will taste what she cooks for her, and that she is called by her name. The writer considers Dorothy to be a special person, as it is not known what she is thinking, and is sure that she is a fan of Jonah. Armand is clearly up to something, as there is some intent behind his every action. Her musings are interrupted by Dorothy, who notices that the lady has become pale as chalk, as if she has no strength at all, and thinks that she is not greeted because today is the previous emperor's march. The princess asks the maid to hurry up with her hair, as the crown prince is coming soon. Armand enters the room and takes his sister and asks her not to worry, even though His Majesty has passed away. At least he is by her side. He promises his sister that he will always be there for her, no matter what happens, and asks her to trust him. They arrive at the cathedral of the Eclat Manor. Sitting on a bench, the writer recalls the plot of the novel. The previous emperor, Charlemagne II, having ascended the throne at a young age, was active in foreign and domestic policy. However, due to a previously unknown epidemic in the empire, he lost the trust of the people and began to be fond of gambling. This is exactly what the Carlman, part-time father of Jonah and Armand, was. She glanced at Armand, wondering how he was feeling. The emperor was not a bad father to his children, so should she be compassionate? To play the role of the pathetic, loving daughter who came to, she goes to the coffin and, convincing herself that she is Jonah, saddened by her father's death, closes her eyes and says that now he will not be touched by suffering. She has just gotten into mourning, but at that moment Armand comes to pay his respects, and putting a flower on the coffin, tells His Majesty that he is immensely sorry for not being able to protect him. Watching this acting game, the girl thinks about throwing Oscar at this madman, and remembering that he can read her mind, she stops thinking about him, because if he hears the slightest thing, it may come back on her. Armand never announced that the emperor was tragically murdered for political purposes. The perpetrator has not been caught either, so this is a good opportunity for Armand to lower the authority of the imperial family. The people in the nation grieve over the death of the emperor. Hearing the princess's thoughts, Armand wonders if the tears are fake. The emperor led a dissolute life. He didn't care about the people. A sincere attitude is not measured by the number of tears lived. He hears hundreds of thoughts. People pity the crown prince, rejoice that at last this useless emperor is dead, and resent that he could not cope with the epidemic, and they are very bored with the ceremony. Sadness, anger, pretense, 1,000 thoughts in one place. His head is about to burst. Some of those gathered simply hate everyone, wishing for his death. When the writer created the Archduke, she only saw the positive side of his ability, but didn't think about the fact that he was agonizing all the time living life. She checks with the Archduke to see if they are actually going to kill some of the people present. Einard explains that they will not be able to do it because they do not have enough strength, but in any case there is a great way that will help him to get rid of these thoughts, namely to concentrate on the princess, because if you concentrate only on one person, then except for the thoughts of the target, you will not hear anything. Sometimes soaps stop his pain like an anesthetic. Einard suggests that the girl try to think of something good too. She immediately thinks of a chicken fried in butter, an event where famous people perform on stage while the audience watches, and a freefall ride. Not knowing what it is, the Archduke asks what this strange structure is. The writer explains to him that it is an attraction where people from a high place suddenly fall straight down, and it is very exciting. Einard then offers to push her off the cliff if she is so excited about it. The girl replies that she'll skate off if he does that, and explains that the game is only fun if it's safe. The Archduke sees in her thoughts that the writer is sitting on a white horse, and assumes that if she has ridden horses, she is an excellent rider. The girl explains that this is a merry-go-round, also an amusement ride, but the horse is far from real. The carousel with horses moves in a circle accompanied by music and is more like a carriage. At that moment, she realized that she was only talking too loudly and naturally. The purification ceremony begins. The priest asks Carlman II to forget about all the experiences of suffering that befell him during his life on Earth and rest in peace. This ceremony is very fascinating to the writer. It is amazing for her to see it in reality. She has personally described it, but only now has she been able to behold what is called divine power. It evoked incredible feelings, as if a warm light enveloped her body and spread out smoothly. Einard jumps up from his seat, grasping his arm. The girl asks the Archduke what happened. The Archduke explains that he cursed a god, but his curse has returned to him, and who better than the author to know that he cannot exist with divine power? A glance at his hand, the girl realizes that Einard still has a burn from contact with the power of the deity. He suffers every time he comes into contact with it, which was her intention. Einard returned to his office. Sometime later, Michael comes to him and informs him that a representative from the church has arrived. The Archduke is outraged that he has arrived at the end of the ceremony and will deal with it. He asks his subordinate how the preparations for the engagement are progressing. Michael replies that regarding this, the prince is categorically against the marriage. It is impossible to change his mind, and it is risky to do anything about it. Einard is not happy that the foolish boy is always meddling. There are still those who doubt the death of the previous emperor. Killing the prince will raise even more suspicion, so for now it must not be done. He asks Michael to ignore everyone and continue preparations, and asks where Her Highness Iona is now. Mikhail replies that he has heard that she is at a tea party at the palace with the other daughters of the aristocrats. Sometime before the tea party, the maid informed the princess that Arlian and Parisa had requested an audience, and had already told them that they should have sent a letter in the first place, otherwise it was inappropriate. Now they were in the reception room. The girl doesn't like the fact that they do whatever they want. Their disregard for the princess is out of line since they let themselves show up out of the blue. The princess decides to go out to them. Frisia Arlian explains that they have come for a reason and would like to be friends with Iona. Violet Parisa says that because the princess never leaves the confines of the palace, Her Majesty does not know more than Gavra gossip, so they came to see her. The princess thanks the girls for such an unexpected visit, but realizes that they do not really want to be friends, but only to find out if the rumors about Jonah and Einard's engagement are true, and seems about to burn a hole in her ring with their gaze. The princess will take her place at Archduke Einard's side, and they are jealous of her. Society must be shocked, because without manners and proper formalities came to the imperial princess. Frisia decides to patch up the question of whether the recent rumors that the princess and Bonaparte are going to get engaged are true. The princess confirms the rumor and thinks that there is no need to read minds. These ladies are like open books. Frisia asks the princess about the tea she brought, and tells her that these valuable Mentabus tea leaves are imported by her family. Violet adds to her words that this tea is a very rare imported product that has not even been imported into the imperial palace yet, so it has been very popular lately, and suggests that the princess probably didn't know that while she was in the palace. The writer is outraged that they are mocking her so openly. If it were the real Jonah, she would have been surprised by their stories and not realized it was mockery and would have let it pass. Placing the cup of tea on the table, the girl tells Lady Frisia that she has noticed a curious thing. After all the imports of the empire go through the documentation in the imperial palace, they are separated and the customs duty is determined. However, there was no notification of the importation of mentibus in the palace. Indeed, both the smell and taste are top-notch. The fact that it is not known in the palace is suspicious. She asks Lady Frisia if House Arleon has any reason not to inform the imperial family of its imports. So how did this happen if there is no such reason? Violet comes into the conversation and says that she was mistaken, and that a mentabus is not a luxurious enough item to be presented in the imperial palace. The princess replies that she feels the tea is really good compared to the other items, and that there must be a problem with the quality assessment. If they have such global problems with imports and customs rates, she promises to discuss the issue with the prince. At this point, the maid comes up to her and asks if they need anything else for the tea party. The maid asks her to escort the guests as they are leaving. Leaving the palace, the ladies discuss among themselves that they thought the princess knew nothing and how it happened. Frisia says with tears in her eyes that she really hopes they won't have any social status problems after this, and she won't tell everything to His Majesty, and yet they wonder how this candy princess knows about the importation. Eynard overhears their conversation and realizes that the writer has stopped acting like a fool as promised. Meanwhile, she's alone and thinking about how tired she is. Every day she is busy trying to survive and protect something. The maid announces the arrival of Archduke Eynard. Eynard enters the room and lets the maid go, telling her that they do not need tea. He approached the writer and handed her a box of desserts. He brought out because when they talked about nice things, the girl first thought of food. He could not find the right things. Yet he heard that she enjoyed tea and sweets. The writer asks the Archduke why he brought her the desserts, and thinks about the fact that the man ate the wrong thing. Eynard notices that now she is prickling, she does not try to hide her thoughts. He asks her to try to convince the prince, as he is strongly opposed to the engagement, and if she fails to do so, she will have to kill him. The girl promises to try to convince her brother. Eynard gives her 2 days. At the welcome party of the church envoy, which will be held in 2 days, he asks her to do everything to make the prince officially announce their engagement that day. The writer promises to change the prince's mind in 2 days. Eynard says that he would prefer her not to laugh, as she has a strange look on her face at that moment. The writer asks him if he is insulting her now. Without answering, the Archduke asks her to finish what he has brought and leaves the room with her permission. The girl says to eat or not to eat. Still, she is curious what they taste like and decides to try one. She admires the taste of this dessert. Among all the things she has eaten, it is the best, and thinks that next time she should ask the Archduke where to buy them. The next day, walking down the corridor, the writer ponders whether she can persuade Armand. He hates and fears Eynard more than anything else in the world, and she will be scratching her head if he doesn't run to him like last time. In any case, Armand is a good and obedient child, so if his older sister explains the situation to him clearly, he will understand. When she reaches Armand's office, she tells him everything. Armand is outraged by this request and tearfully asks his sister if she thinks he will agree to the engagement right away, and asks him to announce it at the banquet, and how it is possible to ask for something so cruel. Armand replies to his sister that he will not allow it, and is sure that the damn villain is up to something, so he will not give his consent. The writer at this moment thinks that she knows perfectly well that this man is a scoundrel and a fitter, but if you go against him, then it won't take long to accumulate. She takes her brother's hand and assures him that the Archduke is not as bad as he thinks, and asks him to reconsider her request. Armand is convinced that his sister is deluding herself. The girl shows him the ring and says that Eynard is not infinitely in love with her, and gave her the ring as a marriage proposal. Armand clarifies to his sister whether she is talking about Archduke Bonaparte. The writer mentally asks Armand to stop asking such questions, because she is so deluded here that she will crack. She cites the example that Eynard gave her that she loves sweets. The evening he brought her an amazing dessert, and it was incredibly delicious. Armand tells his sister that she must not fall for his sweet talk, as it is all hypocrisy and nothing but hypocrisy. The girl reminds her brother that he said that he wishes her happiness, and since he will soon become emperor, she cannot remain in his shadow forever. If she gets engaged to a man of strong status, Bonaparte, her position in society will be strengthened. Besides, it's not even a wedding, it's an engagement. In which case, she would promise him that if anything happened, she would tell him immediately and would not keep silent. If the Archduke torments her, or if her feelings for him change, no matter what, she must tell him. The day of the welcoming party in honor of the church messenger arrives. The writer doesn't remember this part of the novel very well, but one thing is clear: Jonah didn't attend it at all. This reality is a lot different from the novel she wrote. Even when she tried to remember, everything faded, as if in a foggy storyboard. The girl wonders if it is possible to survive if her main advantage of knowing the plot is no longer so. The information she had was now completely useless. Eynard enters her room and asks Her Majesty if she is ready, and tells her that he will accompany her on this solemn day. The writer smirks, thinking that she has goosebumps at the man, who, if he had been born in the modern world, would probably be an actor, and calls him the king of hypocrisy. Eynard reads her thoughts and asks her to shut up and stop making a scene. The girl answers him that she did not say anything at all. The Archduke tells the writer that Kropnitz gave his consent sooner than he thought, and asks her how she convinced him. But anyway, it is easier for him to let the prince go than to kill him. She notices that Eynard puts his hand to his forehead and asks what happened. The Archduke replies that it's just a headache. The girl recalls the way she wrote the character. She made him a shrewd villain suffering from headaches. She lacked interest in the character, so she spiced things up with fraud and an unhappy past. Eynard, reading her thoughts, clutches the glass with anger, so that it shatters into many shards, which is compensated by the fact that she made a great deal of mess when creating it, and all for the sake of simple interest. And touching the girl's cheek, he says that he was curious, if she dies in this world, will he disappear too? Paying attention to his hand, the writer notices a taped wound due to divine power. The Archduke reminds her that she created it too. He knows nothing about this girl, but she sees through him, and therefore he hates her so much that he wants to kill her on the spot. But first he goes to the banquet hall and asks her to wait a little while and approach him when he arrives. Falling to her knees, the writer thinks that although Eynard told her that he hates her and wants to kill her, she feels sadness, disgust, and fear, and that he is just a villain created by her. When she puts her palms on the floor, she accidentally picks up a shard from a broken glass, and her finger starts to bleed. She has become a character in the novel and is experiencing real pain and feelings, so she has to think with her head if she doesn't want to die and find a way to avoid a sad ending. Even though it will be difficult, she will have to come up with a plan because God, the creator of this world, is none other than herself. After waiting for a while, the writer arrives at the banquet hall and apologizes to her brother for being late. Armand notices that she does not look well and asks what is wrong. The girl replies that she is fine and notes that there are more people here than she thought, which makes her uncomfortable. Their dialogue is covered by one of the servants and tells His Highness that it is time to start the celebration. Armand asks his sister to forgive him and leaves her company. The writer at this point recalls the Archduke's question about what would happen if she died. She tries to clean herself up, because if Armand suspects something, there will be trouble. Armand thanks the church representatives for their visit and is honored to welcome them to the Iclith Empire. He hoped that the welcome banquet would help them ease their fatigue after the long journey, and on their way, he would like to take the opportunity to inform them all of the upcoming engagement of Princess Iona Diaz Iclith and Archduke Eynard Bonaparte. The guests begin to discuss it among themselves. The rumors are confirmed, but the unruly do not believe that Bonaparte proposed to this egg-headed princess, and all the prince himself told them about it. The writer notices this and thinks that they will soon drill a hole in her with their looks, all because of that asshole Bonaparte. Eynard grabs her by the arm and, sitting on his knee, tells her that as a result of this, she is now his property, Ji Se-hen. The writer is surprised that the Archduke has just given her real name. Eynard explains that it is because of his ability, although she knows it without his explanation. Ji wants to escape, but she doesn't stand a chance. Armand comes up to them and tells his sister that she is definitely not feeling well, as she is as pale as chalk, and asks if she is all right. The princess replies to her brother that she is a little tired and seems to have caught a cold. She pulls her hand out of the Archduke's and asks him to let her go to rest first, because if the cold worsens, it could be irreparable. When she ran out into the street, she remembered that she had forgotten Dorothy's presence and left her there alone. The banquet was entirely under Eynard's control. Because of the sudden announcement of the engagement and the sugary, sweet play of her beloved, she immediately ran away, but she needs to think seriously about how to survive in this world. Behind her, she heard some strange sounds. She turns around and sees a man in a red hood sitting on the fence. She starts screaming, thinking it's a thief. The man tells her to stop screaming and jumps on her and covers her mouth. He tells her that if she is quieter, he will loosen his grip on her, and if she wants to be pitied, she should not make too much noise, so she will not hurt her. Ji is very annoyed by the mysterious man's command and calls the world a cursed world, since one jerk was enough and now there is a second one. She grabs the man's hand and bites his finger. The man calls her crazy for biting another man. The girl tells him that crazy is invading the imperial palace with threats and starts shouting that there is a man here plotting an assassination attempt on Her Highness. The man gets angry and, having managed to react in time, climbs over the fence. The girl tries to stop him, but all in vain. She calls him a coward and a ridiculous thief. Dorothy runs up to the princess and asks her if she is all right. This mysterious man turns out to be Cardinal Cesare. On his return to the palace, a priestess runs up to him and asks him where he has been, and reminds him that the cardinal should not miss his own welcome banquet, and even in the palace. She asks him to refrain from such behavior and not to cause trouble. Cesare reminds the priestess that this is usually his only behavior, and that he has already said that he hates these disgusting official banquets. The priestess tells him that there will be many events in the future that he will have to attend as a cardinal, so he asks her to stop being childish. A man notices a bite mark on his finger. He can't be hurt unless it's by a divine power or the devil himself. He thought the girl was just a crude aristocrat, but something interesting is afoot. The next day, Eynard scrutinizes some documents and asks Michael where he has placed the guests. The young man replies that they were placed in the Orchid Palace, which is the furthest away from the main palace, as he had ordered. Eynard does not understand which Orchid Palace he is referring to, and whether he actually means the Rose Palace, the royal palace where Princess Jonah lives. Eynard is outraged that his subordinates cannot do anything without his intervention, and asks how the coronation is progressing. Mikhail replies that the preparations for the coronation of His Highness the Prince are going according to plan. Eynard summons his subordinate Said, a man with long black hair, and asks him to tell him about the meeting between Princess Jonah and Cesare. Said tells that yesterday during the banquet, he followed the princess, and after she left the banquet, and saw Iona and Cardinal Cesare crossing paths. Cesare got smart and moved too far away, so he didn't get to listen to their dialogue. Eynard asks him to continue watching. The writer is sitting on the veranda accompanied by her maid Dorothy. She tells Her Majesty that she heard that the thief from yesterday was missed, and so she decides to ask her if it would be better to have a tea party inside the palace. The princess replies that it's all right, especially since it's stuffy to sit inside four walls. If he is a murderer, he is unlikely to come in the middle of the day. Dorothy agrees with the princess, but she still wonders what she will do if something happens to her. In that case, the princess tells the maid that she will finish her tea and return to the palace, and asks her to prepare her a bath. Left alone, Ji ponders what the man's real motive was. He has an unusual appearance and may be an important character, but she didn't have that character in her novel. Silver blue eyes that grew brighter against the brown hair, and that's exactly what the man standing in front of her right now looked like. The girl is frightened by his sudden appearance and starts calling for help. The man tells her that if she makes a fuss this time, things will get very complicated. In an instant, he is right in front of the princess's nose, and she is surprised. The man tells her that he didn't think they could meet so easily. He had a hard time yesterday because of the case, and it's no fun being a killer. Suddenly, the color of his hair changes to red right in front of the princess. He asks the man if it's magic, to which he replies that it's just divine power. Ji realizes that she is facing a priest and says that it is strange for such a position to commit political assassinations. The man replies that priests don't do such things. Divine power is not black magic, and he is not a murderer. The writer asks him why he is hiding and disguising himself. The man replies that she has her own reasons. The girl asks him if the reason has something to do with the murder. The priest finds it strange that her thoughts are always focused on murder. But in any case, he asks her to keep quiet, as this is the most convenient place for him to hide. The princess reproaches him for entering the palace without permission, and says that if she makes a fuss, things will get complicated, and as a priest he has no sense of tact or ethics. She asks him the reason for the game of hide and seek, but he doesn't bother to answer her. And if he really is a priest, shouldn't he remember his manners and introduce himself? The priest rebukes her for biting a stranger's finger. The girl explains that it was only self-defense and asks if there is any wound left. Mulyanka shows his finger for the cinnamon he was bitten on and says that he cured the wound with the help of divine power. At the time of writing the novel, Ji had not thought about the functionality of a divine power or religious organization, so she has a general idea, but somehow it turned into a powerful ability to heal wounds and change hair color. The priest asks the princess what her essence is since she managed to wound him. The girl is surprised that he is whining because his noble, gentle body was wounded. But since he doesn't know her then, he really isn't a murderer. At that moment, Dorothy calls her, shouting her statute and name. The girl realizes that if the priest crosses the maid, there will be a lot of shouting. The priest asks the girl if she is really Princess Iona Diaz Eclit. The girl confirms this and says that if he is indeed a priest, he asks her to be polite and leave. Walking down the palace corridor, Dorothy asks the mistress if anything happened while she was walking alone. Ji tells her that nothing has happened and that she is not to worry about her. She asks the maid if there was a man with silver blue eyes among the messengers from the church. Dorothy replies that she doesn't know anything about it, but she can find out. The writer, immersed in her own thoughts, thinks that no matter how much she thinks about it, he's hardly an extra. It's hard to track him down because he can change hair color, but his eyes are definitely silver blue. But a character with that appearance is impossible to forget. A priestess runs up to Mr. Cesare and resents him for eating all day today and reminds him of the formal dinner he is to attend. Cesare asks Cecilia if Princess Jonah will be at this dinner. The priestess replies that the princess cannot fail to attend, as she is a member of the imperial family. Cesare then promises to come to the dinner, as he wants to meet the princess again and check something out. Returning from the Archduke's study, the writer grumbles that she had not originally intended to attend the dinner, and that in the morning she was put in front of the fact without even listening. Eynard explains that she is a member of the imperial family and therefore must come. Dorothy tells Her Highness that everyone needs to see how beautiful she is, so she should definitely go to this dinner and show off. The princess thanks the maid and thinks it might be for the best to try to change society's opinion of Princess Jonah by going to a formal event once. Dorothy reports to her that she tried to find out what she told her yesterday, and it turns out there are two people matching the description. One is a high-ranking priest and the other a cardinal, but the second is especially handsome. His name is Cesare, and the maids at the Orchid Palace say he is handsome. Ji reflects that if he is Cardinal Cesare, then she is bound to remember him, but since she came to this world, her memories have begun to fade. Dorothy adds to her words that there are some pretty terrible rumors about the Cardinal. He is known for his temper and violent temper, which is why he is nicknamed the Mad Dog of the Temple. The princess thanks the maid for the information and thinks that it would be good to remember what kind of man he is, and preferably in as much detail as possible. Ji and Eynard arrive at the formal dinner. The Archduke holds the bride's hand and tells her that she is especially beautiful today. The writer thanks her companion and realizes that it is all an act of publicity. Eynard asks the servant if the cardinal, a messenger from the church, has arrived. He is told that the cardinal should arrive soon. The writer is surprised that the church representative is late and seems to be really out of control. Eynard orders the ceremony to begin as soon as His Highness Crown Prince Wogo arrives. At that moment, the cardinal's arrival is announced. Cesare apologizes for being late because he got a little lost in the palace on the way here. Cecilia runs up to the cardinal and reminds him that she asked him to come early. The writer covers her mouth with her hands in surprise. She did not expect that the man she had called a thief and murderer turned out to be a cardinal. Seeing the Archduke, Cesare asks him in a rude tone why he is looking at him and says that he does not want to talk to such trash as he is in the same room. Eynard notices that the cardinal is as rude as ever and hopes that he will be more restrained in the presence of His Majesty the Crown Prince. The princess asks Cesare if he is going to take responsibility for his behavior. She explains that everything here has been prepared by the imperial family of Iklit, especially for the guests of the representatives. Even if His Highness the Crown Prince is absent now, she is a person of royal blood, so she resents him for daring to say such a thing in the presence of a member of the imperial family and asks him to live up to his status as a cardinal. There is silence in the room. Everyone is surprised that Princess Jonah has said such a thing, as if she were a completely different person. Cesare bows and apologizes for his rudeness. The princess forgives him, hoping he will be careful from now on. People discuss the fact that Her Highness can put people in their place. The aura she gives off is like a different person, and it seems the rumors about her were false. The Crown Prince arrives and dinner begins. After a while, everyone has finished their meals, and Armand proposes to move on to the main topic of the meeting and asks all the servants to leave. The prince asks the cardinal, the Pope's representative, if he has anything to say about the disappearance of the children. Cesare says that first of all, the papacy is still investigating, and strangely there are no leads, so the Pope says that the perpetrator is probably not human. The prince freezes at this assumption and decides to ask whether it is worth suspecting non-humans and mammals in such a case. The cardinal replies that they are considering and investigating various leads. They plan to send more of their men to the crime scenes. The prince thanks for the information, because in order to solve this situation as soon as possible, they will hope for a fruitful cooperation. That concludes the formal dinner. Gia wonders if there was such an incident in her novel. Cecilia runs up to Cesare and says that she is glad that he has come, but that it does not cancel his lateness. Cesare replies that there is no cause for concern, for he has come. Looking at the princess, the nun says that if you think about it, Princess Jonah is not at all what she was said to be. The cardinal confirms this and adds that she is much smarter than the rumors, and for some reason it seems as if she is protecting Eynard. Meanwhile, the Archduke reflects on the fact that Iona is really good. She took advantage of the situation by siding with him to prove herself and show everyone that she has changed, and the rumors about her were false. The priests don't know the situation, and they can't read minds, so it's appropriate to remain silent. This girl may be more useful than he thought, but the month is coming to an end. The next day, Dorothy tells the princess that His Majesty the Prince is planning to dine with her, and come to think of it, the coronation is coming up. She has seen her dress, and it is really beautiful. The princess's tells reminds the maid that the main character of the coronation is not her after all. The girl at this moment reflects that in any case, dear Armand will finally ascend the throne. She has been waiting for the day when to consolidate power he will become emperor, but will Eynard really be inactive? Meanwhile, Armand reflects on the fact that there is not much time left. After the coronation, he will officially become the ruler of the Iklit Empire. But if he has no support or power, he wants to protect his position as emperor. Eynard Bonaparte is dangerous to leave in allies and enemies. But he must cooperate with him since the real power is concentrated in his hands. It is no secret that most of the policies of the previous past emperor were actually carried out by Bonaparte. The previous emperor had no skills or backbone to run the country. He was a puppet ruler. However, Armand has no intention of becoming such. For his sister's sake, he promises to become stronger. Because of this sudden engagement, she is like a hostage. His thoughts are interrupted by a servant reporting that Archduke Bonaparte demands an audience. Eynard bows and apologizes to the prince for distracting him, but there is something he would like to say to him. Armand asks the Archduke to come and sit down. Eynard declines the offer as he assumes the prince is probably a gift, so he says something and leaves immediately. He tells His Majesty that preparations for the coronation are progressing well, and that when the coronation is over, he and Jonah are going to be engaged immediately after the coronation. Armand says that he thinks they are in too much of a hurry, and that there is no reason for it. Eynard explains that Her Highness Iona wants to hold the engagement ceremony as soon as possible, and it is his duty to make his beloved happy, and for this he needs the prince's help. The Archduke draws Armand into the pact and asks him to do the right thing and expects him to make a wise decision. At dinner, Armand is replaying this dialogue in his head. The princess asks her brother what he is thinking about and reminds him that the food may get cold. The prince tells her that he was not thinking about anything serious and asks how she liked the food. The girl tells him that the food is delicious and the chef's skills are amazing. Armand replies that he's glad she enjoyed it, and watching her carefully cut the steak, remembers how at family dinners she used to thread a whole piece of meat onto a knife, while her father reminded her that she needed a fork. The prince notices how skillfully she now uses the utensils, and wonders when she learned to do it. The princess tells Armand that she is glad that she is having dinner with him tonight, as he has not been busy all the time, and they do not have the opportunity to spend time together, and after the coronation, he will have more things to do. She thinks it would be wonderful if they could spend time together like this in the future. Armand mentally calls his older sister the kindest person in the world and agrees to eat together in the future, and then leaves the dining room. Reviewing the treaty Eynard gave him, Armand ponders that if he does as he said, if he surrenders, the security of the network inn will be jeopardized. The Archduke asked him to gradually hand over the powers of the Emperor to him 1 month after his coronation, so he could take care of Her Highness Jonah. He threatened the prince, saying that his sister is in his hands, and so he can't trust the man who threatens Iona. But there is no other way for him to protect his sister, and he has no one but her. A few days later comes the day of the coronation of the new emperor. The square is decorated with red flags and tapestries. 2 men are discussing among themselves what the Archduke has done. Sir Therese comes up to them and says that he has heard something interesting, so he came. One of them tells them that the Archduke Bonaparte has come to support the inept prince before his coronation. His intentions have always been hard to understand. And then there's this engagement to a different princess. His mate asks him not to speak out like that in front of the prince. The man apologizes to Mayor Therese and explains that he didn't mean to offend him at all. Their conversation is interrupted by the announcement that Her Highness Princess Iona is coming in a bright red bouffant dress. The guests are surprised by her appearance, as the princess has not appeared in public for many years, so they could not imagine that she is so beautiful and graceful. Whoever asked all said that the princess is silly and funny, but she is the absolute opposite of herself from the rumors, the perfect princess of the Iclith Empire. Archduke Eynard approaches the princess and gently takes her hand. In the meantime, people are discussing Jonah's behavior at the meeting of the Daughters of the Aristocrats and at the welcoming dinner with representatives from the church. Can a person change in such a short period of time? As the coronation begins, Cardinal Cesare pours milk over the head of the prince, sitting on his knee in front of him. Jean notices that the cardinal looks like a completely different man. Cesare flings the crown at the emperor. Armand rises gracefully from his knee. The writer notices that Armand is very nice and tries to look impressive. Eynard tells her that it is not time to enjoy the coronation openly, as tomorrow is the last day. A month has already passed, and tomorrow the time in which she had to prove her usefulness expires. The writer asks her to trust her instead of reminding her. At that moment in the distance, she notices an archer and an arrow flying at Eynard. The girl stands between the arrow and the Archduke's body, saving his life. The arrow goes deeply through the girl's shoulder, and she falls to the ground unconscious. Eynard orders the servants to find the shooter. Armand, meanwhile, asks the cardinal to heal his sister sooner rather than later. Cesare explains that the first thing to do is to get the arrow. After pulling the arrow from the princess's shoulder, the cardinal tries to use his divine power to heal her, but nothing worked. Einard asks him what this could mean. Cesare explains that if you channel divine power in this way, it should heal her completely, but it doesn't. Einard calls the cardinal totally incompetent since he can't figure it out. Cesare says in a harsh tone that it is not his fault and asks him not to speak rashly. The emperor runs up to them and asks them to stop the silly argument, as it is more important to save his sister. First, he suggests that they take her to a room and call a doctor. A girl is lying on the bed with a bandaged shoulder. Armand asks the doctor how his sister is feeling. The doctor replies to the emperor that fortunately the shooter did not hit any vital organs, but the princess is bleeding a lot, just in case it is better to have someone stay with her tonight. Dorati proposes her candidacy, but she is interrupted by Einard and says that he will do it since Her Highness is his fiancée. Armand thinks about the fact that even during the attack, the Archduke was very concerned about his sister and even offered to stay with her. A man who uses his sister would not do that. The emperor tells everyone that he will leave first as he needs to clean up after what happened and asks the Archduke to take care of his sister. When he is alone with his sleeping bride and puts the back of his palm to her forehead, he calls her stupid, because if she saw the arrow coming, she could have just warned him. He can't believe that she actually shielded him from the arrow. At this point, she has a dream where she calls the Archduke a damn fool. When he heard that, Einard grinned, and it was immediately clear to him what he was to Jie Se-hyun. The Archduke leaves the princess's room. A servant comes to him and informs him that the man who attacked Her Highness Jonah has been apprehended. The man who fired the crossbow was found with 2 accomplices, including the one who helped them escape, but 2 of them killed themselves, and only the last one was caught alive. The Archduke and a subordinate descend into the dungeon. Einard asks him if the perpetrator has been interrogated. The subordinate replies that he could not interrogate him properly because the shooter was trying to hurt himself when the gag was removed. Einard comes to the dungeon where the criminal is chained and tells him that he can hide nothing in front of him. It is obvious that he was the target from the beginning. The Archduke kneels before him and asks him why he shot him and who is behind it. Red cracks appear on the perpetrator's face. The servant tells the master that this guy will keep quiet until the last. Noticing the red streaks on the criminal's face, Einard pulls back his shirt and sees the same on his body. He realizes this guy is wearing a powerful spell. As soon as he was caught, not only his memories but his mind was sealed, and only suicidal thoughts were imprinted in his mind. This is high-level magic, which means there's someone out there who wanted to kill the Archduke so badly. The servant tells his superior that if it is true, the culprit will be sentenced and is already drawing his sword. But Einard stops him and says that it is better for the shooter to suffer. In the morning, G wakes up and sees the teapot and cookies that Dorothy brought beside her. The maid tearfully runs to the mistress and hurts that she is very glad that she woke up. She had already thought she was going to die and was very worried about it. The princess tells her that she shouldn't have worried because she is alive. The doctor tells the princess that she has been unconscious for 3 days. Dorati explains that originally the doctor said she would wake up in a day, but it's been 3, and so everyone was very worried. But anyway, the worst is over now that she's awake, but her condition may get worse again, so she should get some rest. Dorati assumes that the princess is hungry since she hasn't eaten anything all this time, and promises to bring something. The doctor says goodbye to the princess until tomorrow. G felt a pain in her arm. Now it was obvious to her that the plot had changed so much that even she, the writer, couldn't predict events. Jonah, who was supposed to die, is alive, and there's a case of missing street kids that she doesn't remember. And the accretion at the coronation, which wasn't in the original, is an event that deserves special attention. She intended to write it, but changed her mind and was going to make it a climactic event. The place where the assassin was hiding, the time when the arrow was fired. All this was written down in detail in a notebook, but she didn't put it into the novel itself. But even if she did, then whoever's behind this is a Grey Cardinal. However, the writer can't remember anything, and if you think about it, after she got into the novel, she couldn't remember the content of her own work. If the novel changes, It must be a side effect of those changes. The Archduke Bonaparte enters the room. Jo remembers that it has been a month since their arrangement, and nothing comes to her mind. Eynard wrinkles the girl about why she is so tense. The writer replies that she is not dressed up at all, and asks about what it is in his hands. Eynard replies that it is soup. He intercepted it from the maid on his way here. The girl wonders why he is doing this, and whether he has put poison in the soup to kill her, as it is obvious from his previous actions. Eynard tastes the soup in front of her to tell her that there is no poison in it. The girl thinks that if the Archduke didn't intend to kill her, he just wanted to make fun of her. Eynard tells G that he is not going to kill her, so he asks her to stop theorizing. The girl is surprised by this answer, not believing that he just made a contract with her, and asks if he is sure he won't kill her. The Archduke reiterates that he will not kill her, and says that he has to go because of the incident at the coronation. There are a lot of things that need to be settled, so he will not be able to come for a while because he will be busy. G asks with some delight if it's torn. The Archduke asks her if she is happy now. G answers that she is sad. Left alone in the room, the writer thinks about the fact that she doesn't know why Eynard has pushed aside thoughts of murder. Every time she met eyes with Eynard, she was so worried. Come to think of it, she didn't even think about returning to her world because she was busy surviving. G doesn't know how long she will be in this world and what she will do to survive in this world. All this time she has been thinking that she needs strength to protect herself, and for that she is going to study the structure of this world. A week later, the princess sits in a lesson with one of the court teachers. He tells her that in ancient times, when the world was peaceful and graceful, the devil appeared and devoured all things. When he was about to destroy the last island of life, a bright light burst from the depths of the winter Lee and drove the demon away. The light turned human, and so the imperial family was born, and the Eclith Empire was erected on the land where the light appeared. This is the legend of the founding of their empire. However, instead of trying to understand this legend, she should try to interpret it from a different perspective. At this point, the teacher calls the lesson to order and says he will teach the next one after the princess has rested. It was the first day of school, and G noticed that the subjects here are quite difficult. Last week she had told the chamberlain that she wanted to study, and he was surprised that the princess who had never wanted to study had taken to it. Despite the complexity, the lessons are all interesting to her, especially the history of this world and country, which was only described in 2 words in the novel. Hearing such explanations from the character is very interesting. Now that she has a closer look, she thinks this world is quite charming. The next teacher tells the princess at the end of the lesson that she has done a good job and bids her farewell until the next lesson. Now G is supposed to have a theology class, and they say the theology teacher for a member of the imperial family is appointed directly from the church. She assumes it will most likely be a presentable and dignified person. Cardinal Cesare enters the office and tells the princess that from today he will teach her theology. Noticing the frightened expression on her face, he asks the princess why she is so surprised, if it is because she thinks he is not suitable for her. The princess replies to the cardinal that this is not the case, but that it is just a little strange for her that he has become her teacher, and surprising that he has agreed to it. Cesare explains that this is a direct order from the church, and that he was curious about the princess, who differs from the rumors. Smiling, he proposes to begin the lesson. The cardinal tells the princess about divine power and that it is the basis of this world. In other words, God's will. There is divine power in every part of the world, in every corner of it. Heaven and earth, the human body and the voice, even in this book that he brought it, is there. All people are born with this power, but not everyone can use it. The powers that can be used are called active powers. Because of the presence and amount is determined at birth, all citizens are examined for active power in the first minutes of life. The girl asks the cardinal how the examination is going. Cesare replies that if she is interested, he can believe her divine power. He extends his hand to the princess's head. She feels a warmth running through her body. It feels like sunlight passing through her body. Cesare sharply removes his hand from the princess's head and says that there is a huge amount of active energy in her body, and that no one knew about the amount of her power is really strange. Ji tells the Cardinal that she thinks what he said is a bit exaggerated. Even if she does have power, it's hardly that much. Cesare explains that this is the first time he has felt such an amount of power, and perhaps even more than his, and even more than the strongest members of the church. He assumes that he will try to learn more about the active power, but he is not allowed to tell anyone about it. Jo thinks of this as a good thing, because she needed the power to help protect herself. Church, a group of individuals whose statuses are determined by the amount of divine power they have. Due to the fact that the divine power score is degenerate, the statuses in the temple are absolute. It's a very conservative place where almost nothing changes. But if they discover that she could become a source of trouble because of her power, then it could affect the foundation of the temple, which they wouldn't be happy about. Also, if she has more divine power than the church, it would be dangerous if word of this gets out. If Cesare keeps the secret, this newfound power will be very useful. Cesare thinks that the wound on his finger and the untreatable wound may have something to do with this power. He realized that this girl was not ordinary, but it would be interesting to watch her. Heading to his room, Ji reflects on the fact that Armand said he was busy and really hasn't shown up all week. He used to come over to annoy. Every day the video face of someone who can't be trusted, and to suddenly stop is a little strange. Opens the door to his room and sees Armand in it. He assumes that his fiancée really missed him, and he's sorry that he was so busy with work that he made his fiancée feel lonely. Ji answers him that she never said such a thing, and asks why he came to see her. The Archduke explains that he wanted to ask her why she shielded him from an arrow during the coronation. The writer is confused. She clarifies if he really came just to ask about it. She explains that the arrow was flying and just reacted in time and does not need a reason to save someone in danger, and asks if he is interested in anything else. Armand gives the girl a jar of medicine and asks her to put it on the wound. Stopping at the door, he says that he heard that she has started studying today and advises her to quit theology, as the teacher of that subject is particularly awful. Ji seems to think that the Archduke is asking to be jealous of her. A few days later, in the main conference room of the Imperial Palace, the Emperor holds a meeting to discuss the provisioning of the army. Armand asks the Emperor to sign the document. Armand finds it suspicious that he is asked to sign without examining the document, but assumes that it must have already been discussed by those concerned. According to his contract with the Archduke, all power passes into his hands. The Archduke appointed him to this position because he needed someone to sign documents with the imperial seal. No more and no less than that. Armand signs the document, and leaning on his arm mentally rejoices that the meeting is over, and decides to go back to his room and rest first. Armand comes to the Emperor and says that he looks tired, and has also heard that he has been skipping meals lately due to hard work. And since the health of the ruler of the Eclith Empire must come first, he suggests that Armand go to Belua Palace for a few months and get some rest. The Palace of Belua is the furthest thing from the imperial castle, so it is obvious that this is a hint that he needs to get out of the Archduke's sight and not interfere with his plan for the imperial throne, and he needs to decide what is best for his sister's sake. A short time later, Michael informs the gentleman that Prince Therese requests an audience. Entering the office, the prince apologizes to the Archduke for distracting him. He explains the prince's visit by saying that he had recently heard that he had told the emperor that he had a favorable offer. A few days later, the cardinal gives the princess a lesson. After the lesson, Cesare tells her that after the last lesson, he has been thinking a lot about her active power, and frankly, as a cardinal, he is obliged to inform the church about it, but he is sorry to lose the amount of power that belongs to Her Highness. So he wants to make her an offer, namely to help her practice using her power. And if he accepts, he will keep it a secret and help her. Ji thinks it's exactly what she wanted, but if she learns to control divine power and the church finds out about it, they won't leave her alone. However, she needs something to help her protect herself, so this is a chance she can't pass up. The princess agrees to his proposal as she wants to control her divine power. Cesare explains that it is too dangerous to practice during the theology lessons. There is a risk of being discovered, so he suggests that they see each other unofficially twice a week instead. Jo realizes that she can then make up a fairy tale for Einard that she has given up theology lessons. She asks the Cardinal how they can keep the location of the classes secret. Cesare replies that it would be nice to find a place where they don't have to worry about being disturbed and where outsiders can't easily get in. There is a suitable place where she would not be discovered, even if she practiced controlling divine power. That's why it would be wonderful to hold them in Her Highness Princess Iona's room. It's a place that can't be accessed without Her Highness's permission. G agrees that the room is a place where it's hard to be discovered, but it's more like a game of cat and mouse, and she feels like she's in trouble. Armand sits in his office signing documents and thinks they're useless. Everything important goes to Bonaparte, and he only gets the papers that require the emperor's signature. He feels terrible because he is in his room all day, and all he does is read the texts of the treaties. Armand just wants to get some fresh air, but there are knights outside the door watching him. Last time he couldn't get out either, they were blocking his way. Armand decides to go outside through the window. Sitting on the lawn, he thinks that he feels much better, and that harder times call for desperate measures. Before the knights miss him, he decides to get some air. Suddenly, he hears footsteps coming in his direction, and he thinks that it is probably the knights who have noticed his disappearance and have gone in search of him. This person turns out to be the priestess Cecilia, who was standing next to the cardinal. The girl notices the emperor and almost apologizes to him for disturbing his rest, as she did not know that there was someone here. Armand replies that everything is all right, and she did not disturb him at all. Cecilia grabs the emperor's hand and explains that she has given him a blessing because he looks very tired. She promises to pray that God's favor will be with him. Armand hears his name being called and realizes that he has been noticed. He tells the priestess that he needs to hurry, and so he will go first. Cecilia realizes that the young man was the emperor. The next day, the doctor visits the princess and tells her that he finds it amazing that she is recovering so quickly. The girl explains that she found a very good medicine and used it. The doctor asks the patient where she found this very rare ointment and explains that such ingredients are as difficult to find as it is to make the medicine itself, which is why her wound healed so quickly. The writer thought it was just a medicine that the Archduke bought and gave her just as a courtesy, but it turns out he was really worried. The doctor says goodbye to the princess. After him, Dorati comes into the room and tells the lady that His Majesty has lately been in poor health. They say that he is going somewhere far away to improve his health, and that his superior Bonaparte has advised His Majesty to rest at the Palace of Bellois. The girl asks Dorati to prepare everything for the exit. She is going to visit Einard. Michael informs the Archduke that Princess Iona has come to see him. Entering Einard's office, the girl tells him that she heard that he told His Majesty to go to the palace in the province to improve his health, and clarifies whether it is true or not. Einard asks Michael to come out. The Archduke reminds the writer that she herself told him that it was the baby that would kill him, so he solves problems as they arise. Jo says that in that case she should be dead, however the opposite is true. The story changes, and maybe Armand won't kill him. Einard replies that this can't be completely ruled out, and considering it is possible, it is the height of generosity to just get Armand out of here. The writer asks if he is not going to kill the emperor in this palace, to which the Archduke replies that everything is possible. The girl asks him to give up and just leave Armand alone. Einard replies that everything has been decided and he has nothing more to say to her. G tells the Archduke that he was originally such a man, and she is sorry that she was only grateful to him for a moment. Donato in, she leaves the office. Einard thought about the fact that the girl was talking about Armand, and he wasn't even her brother, just a fictional book character. But why she was reacting that way? He can't understand it. G is terribly angry that Einard is really going to exile Armand to Bellois. Rumors that Armand will leave in a week have already spread throughout the imperial palace. She decides to help Armand and eliminate Einard with divine power. But if she is going to defeat the Archduke, then she needs to learn how to use the power as soon as possible. in which case she needs to find the Cardinal. In the corridor, the writer meets a girl with long brown hair. She greets Her Majesty Iona and tells her that she is very happy to meet the princess. G greets the lady and asks her who she is. The girl introduces herself as the daughter of the Teresia family, Lavian Lou Teresia. Lavian Lou Teresia is the most important figure in the Eclit Empire after Bonaparte, the only daughter of the Teresia family. A mad maiden, endlessly in love with Eynard, and willing to do anything for him. If the story had followed the original scenario, she would now be the one who would be Eynard's bride. Lavian tells her that she has always wanted to see Her Highness Iona, so she came to the Rose Palace to meet her. She asks the princess to do her the honor and have a cup of tea together. G is sure that Lavian is thrilled to be Eynard's fiancé. She is a little uneasy, but would be interested to know what she is thinking, and so agrees to her proposal. Lavian offers Her Majesty this one to try some tainted tea leaves. She says that these leaves have a rich taste and a really pleasant aroma, so she was going to give it to His Excellency Bonaparte, but she is honored to spend time with Her Highness. The writer finds the lady's words too cloying, and yet she has no time to relax, and it is possible that she is able to slip poison into her mouth while smiling sweetly. When she sees that Lavian is the first to taste the tea, she is convinced that there is no poison in it. Lavian says that her heart is in awe that she has become so close to Her Highness and calls the princess the first beauty of the empire. Only after seeing her in person could she see the beauty of the princess in all its glory. G notices that Lely Teresia is different from the original character and behaves differently from other aristocrats. Perhaps the content of the original work has changed, and therefore Lavian is also changed, but you cannot lose vigilance. Who but she knows what kind of person Lavian is? The princess thanks the lady for such nice words in her direction and says that it was a pleasure to talk to her, but unfortunately she has to leave her. Lavian tells Her Majesty that she hopes they will be able to talk again. Eynard enters the guest room and tells the princess that he decided to look for her, since she wasn't in the room. He asks Lavian why she is here. The lady explains that she wanted to see Her Highness Jonah so badly that she asked for tea together and also wanted to give him tea. Eynard defiantly walks past the lady and asks her to leave the tea and leave as he has business to attend to Her Majesty. Approaching the princess, he says that if she moves so much, the wound may reopen. Lavina gives them a pleasant talk and leaves the room. G asks the Archduke why he is so cold to Lavian. She saw her for the first time today, but she is neat and pretty, and her smile is very nice. She seems like a lovely lady. Eynard asks the writer what this has to do with him. The girl explains that originally his fiancé was Lavian. Eynard asks her if she is still against sending Armand to the Belua Palace, and he wonders what the difference is between this child Armand and him. He doesn't like that she even now thinks of him as a character in a novel instead of a living person, and asks her not to decide for him. Before leaving the room, Eynard says that his decision about Armand is unchangeable, and there is no turning back. G tells him that she does not mean that, and Armand has nothing to do with it. Lying on the bed, the writer ponders why Eynard took offense and left after making such a fuss. If you think about it, when Eynard found out that this world was Romans, he took it very calmly, so it was hard to know what he was thinking. On the day of the ball, when she talked about him as a character, he had reacted extremely harshly. But compared to that time, now it seemed like his eyes were full of sadness. Although she has decided to stay in this world, she can't seem to accept this reality deep down. G decides to give up the idea of eliminating Eynard with divine power to begin with, but only to suppress him. She doesn't really want to do that. The day before Armand was to be sent to the Belua Palace, deep in the night, the writer put a pillow under her blanket, took Dorothy's maid's uniform to hide among Armand's escorts. Looking at how far Eynard has come, it is obvious that he will harm Armand either on the road or on arrival. Even if the Archduke doesn't kill him, he could imprison Armand there for the rest of his life, and that can't be allowed to happen. First, she has to get to the Belua Palace, and when she is told to come back, she replies that she can't go and leave Armand alone, but first she has to get out of the Rose Palace. G sneaks onto the balcony and looking down, she realizes that it's too high and dark, and yet she decides to jump off without any fear. The girl feels that she has fallen too softly, as if she had not touched the ground. When she opens her eyes, she sees that she is held in her arms by a man with violet eyes and long black hair. The writer is surprised that he somehow knew that she would jump from the balcony that night, and that he was able to time her fall. His movements are precise, like a killer's. She realizes that this man is Saad. The writer asks him if Einard had him follow her. A killer Cade who lives in the night. Bonaparte's shadow, secretly doing his bidding. That's how she described him. He's clearly disoriented by being exposed, and she decides to push him while he's confused. The girl tells Seydu that as long as he goes to Einard she can escape, then he'll be in trouble too, but promises not to tell Einard if he agrees to follow her. Ji finds a place where there are carriages going to the Belwa Palace and thinks it is a good place to hide. She finds a suitable carriage and decides to hide there near the luggage and cover herself with a blanket, and goes inside and tells Seydu to sit next to her. After evaluating his behavior, the writer reflects that when she wrote the novel, she made Said a man with a determined character. But for some reason he seems so innocent. She asks him if he follows her around every day, and tells him that if he doesn't answer her, she will find out. Einar doesn't seem like such a villain to her. He may not be bad, but she doesn't care anymore. She leaves late at night and is desperate for sleep, and even though she is not allowed to, she passes out. When he realizes that the princess is not following him, Said immediately escapes from the carriage. Ji wakes up hearing people talking. When she opens her eyes, she sees that Said is gone and most likely went to Einard's place. She doesn't know when Einard will come here and find her, so she tries to decide quickly whether to hide somewhere else or make the procession speed up. She hears footsteps approaching and decides to cover herself with a cloth. Einard enters the carriage and finds the princess and tells her that she has caused a lot of trouble for the servants of the Rose Palace and asks her to go back. Walking down the corridor, Einard remembers a conversation with the prince. He suggested to Einard the idea of hiding the murderer in the castle of Belwa. The Archduke's purpose is known to everyone, and he offers to join the procession on this journey. But in return, he asks them not to forget his kindness. Einard tells the writer that he is surprised that she wanted to save Armand to the point of such eccentric behavior. Ji explains that it's not just Armand she wants to save. She wants no one else to die in the world she has gotten to, and that includes the Archduke. He and Armand are very precious to her because they are characters she created. If she saves Armand, she will make sure that he leaves his power so that he doesn't become a threat to the Archduke and he can take the throne. She is the one who created Einard's life, and so she will take responsibility for it and will not let him die for anything until the end of the story. From the moment Einard was born, all people wished him nothing but death. The cursed man seemed like a terrible villain. Flattery in the face, but they would stab him in the back and never save him. Plus, he told her he'd kill her and her brother. So he doesn't understand how he can be so confident about such things when her escape attempt was so quickly stopped. However, this girl can really be in this world as a god. Einard accepts her offer and in order to save Armand asks her to take responsibility for his life. Ji promises to save him. Einard does not understand why he is so willing to trust these words. Prince Teresia is furious. As soon as the emperor arrived at Belwa Palace, he should have ordered an assassin to take out the emperor, but Einard suddenly stopped the procession just before departure. Before the coronation, the Archduke suddenly supported the emperor, was going to invoke him, but suddenly cancelled the whole thing. The servant informs the prince that he has received a parcel. The prince asks him to leave the package and releases him. Parcels from an anonymous sender began arriving a few years ago. The first time there was a note attached with instructions on how to behave. It was complicated, but after following all the advice he received money and power. This time the prince also followed the instructions, but that bastard Einard completely ruined everything. A new package will tell him his next move. Last night the writer had not been able to sleep, so she was very tired. Although she made a lot of effort, she was quickly discovered by Einard. However, as a result, she received a promise that he would not kill Armand and that he would stop following her by sending Said. Einard had originally decided whether to keep her alive, and now she must keep his. Even if it wasn't for that promise, she wouldn't let him die. Besides, she liked Einard the best. The girl hears a sound from the balcony, but when she opens the door she never sees it. But for some reason, there are many stones on the floor. She decides to look down and sees Cardinal Cesare standing under her balcony. He climbs onto the princess's balcony and says it's time for a lesson in controlling divine power. The princess replies that she was just thinking about it and asks to go to her room. G wonders how he could have thought of coming over the balcony. Cesare notices that there are no maids and he's timed it right. He has a lot of plans for the first lesson, so he suggests we begin. He suggests that she first try to feel the divine power and just take his hand. The girl feels warm energy flowing through her hands. The cardinal asks her not to get emotional, or it will be harder to feel the divine power. G comes to the conclusion that through divine energy, the cardinal can recognize her feelings. She explains that she's a little angry about her fiancé, and that's probably it. Cesare is surprised that the princess is engaged. The girl tells him that it was announced at the welcome party of the temple representatives, but she remembers that the cardinal was not present at the party that night, but was outside. Cesare explains his absence by saying that he did not want to see one person. The princess asks if it is the Archduke Bonaparte. Cesare confirms her guess. The girl tells him that Einard is her fiancé. The cardinal is horrified at the news. He calls the Archduke a son of a bitch and says she should not keep in touch with this man. G reflects on the fact that Cesare dislikes Einard intensely, glaring angrily and spitting curses. She recalls writing that Einard spent his childhood in the temple and assumes that something happened between them then. The girl decides to ask the cardinal why he hates Einard so much. Cesare explains his hatred by the fact that the Archduke killed his friend. It was a long time ago, so there is no one who remembers it, but this man does not change over the years, and that is what he is all about. G recalls that there was a murder incident in Einard's past. The murdered priest was apparently connected to Cesare. Within her novel, all the characters are pre-connected. She knows little about their relationship to each other. She replies to the cardinal that in that case he has a decent reason to hate him. Cesare suggests that the princess seems to know of the man's duplicity too, in which case he wonders how the engagement came about. He is sure that she does not like the fact of their engagement, as he heard that the princess was discovered this morning when she wanted to secretly follow the emperor to the palace of Bellois, perhaps for his safety, or because she did not want to be in the imperial palace because she suffers from the threats of her fiancé. Knowing Einard, it's quite possible. He also asks the princess if it torments her that she speaks of this villain as her husband. The writer notes that the cardinal is very clever and she should watch her words around him. The princess explains to him that all is not as it seems and offers to continue the lesson in controlling divine power. The next day, the cardinal teaches the princess the basic, this control of divine power, make a flower bloom and wither, and gives her homework to practice this skill daily. The girl tells the cardinal that it's quite difficult and unsure if it's really basic. Dorothy informs Her Majesty that it is time for dinner with His Majesty, and she must go to it right away. The girl asks the maid if she will be late. The maid tells her that she will be on time. G hurries to dinner with Armand. In the hallway, she notices drops of blood. Following the trail, she sees the Einard sitting at the corner of the Einard, the bloody body of the emperor, and a sword lying nearby. The girl is horrified. She asks the Archduke why this is in front of his office. Einard wants to explain, but is interrupted by guards shouting that the emperor has been murdered. One of the guards approaches the princess and says that in order to check His Majesty's condition, he must be moved. The writer asks Einard if he killed Armand right outside the study and reminds him that he promised her that he would not kill her brother. The Archduke replies that this situation may have created a misunderstanding, but he did not kill Armand. When he arrived, the emperor was already lying there, and his sword has the blood of the man who was hiding in the study, and his body is lying inside. At this point, the princess is told that the emperor is breathing, and that it is necessary to bring the cardinal from the Orchid Palace as soon as possible. Einard tells the knights that he is escorting Her Highness and asks them to move the emperor to the bedroom as quickly as possible. Joe looks at Eynard and thinks that if it were him, he would not do it in such a conspicuous place. On the contrary, he would have chosen a more secluded place, and there he would have dealt with the emperor. The Archduke offers the bride to return to the Palace of Roses first, but she refuses because she wants to be with Armand. G bursts into the emperor's room, and seeing the cardinal trying to heal his wound, asks Cesare what her brother's condition is. The cardinal explains that, thanks to timely help, the external injuries have been healed, but the internal injuries do not seem to have been healed completely. He is informed that the Archduke was nearby when His Majesty was attacked. The wound inflicted on the emperor looks like it was done by a professional, so it was not the Archduke. Armand confirms the cardinal's words. She says that he happened to pass by the office and the door was ajar, so out of curiosity, he decided to look in. As soon as he opened the door, a man appeared and started at him. This man was definitely a knight of the imperial family, but his eyes looked lifeless. Most likely he was being controlled by someone like a puppet. If he wasn't the first to arrive on the scene, this man would be in trouble. Eynard asks the guard where the corpse that was in his office is. The guard replies that he was not given any instructions, so they left it as it was. The Archduke tells the emperor that he needs to believe something, so that's why he declines. Cardinal finds Eynard to be a cold-blooded type. The writer thinks that if Armand's words are true, and it was not Eynard who did it, she feels a little ashamed that she doubted him. Armand remembers that the long-awaited dinner never happened and asks his sister what they should do. The princess tells her brother that it doesn't matter now and asks why he wasn't in the dining hall. Armand explains that he wanted to decorate the dining table with roses, which his sister loves, so he went to pick them. He regrets not being at the appointed place as she is worried about him, and the flowers probably fell in the hallway. G wondered why Armand was only thinking about her. She said that she was doing everything for her brother, but she was only thinking about how to remove him from the position of emperor, and because of that, she felt hard at heart. Eynard examines the body of the attacker and notices the same seal as the shooter, the fact that the same man is behind the incidents at the coronation, and it is obvious that he was the target both then and now. The guards inform the Archduke that they have received orders to escort him to an emergency conference, but not as an Archduke, but as a suspect in an attack on His Majesty the Emperor. Eynard replies that the investigation has not yet been properly initiated. Then, on what grounds are they going to make an arrest? The guard explains that it is not an arrest, but they just want to hear what he has to say, since a witness has recently come forward who has pointed him out as the attacker. In the main assembly hall, Prince Teresia calls the meeting to order. He informs all present that the emperor was attacked by a knight this afternoon. The attacker was found dead, but some time ago a witness appeared who pointed out who was behind the murder. The Archduke Bonaparte was originally supposed to lead this meeting, but since the situation is special, he hopes for understanding on his part. The princes call a witness. The palace maid claims to have seen the offender at dawn today and asks her what she saw. The girl says that she clearly saw His Excellency Bonaparte meeting secretly with a knight of the emperor at dawn. One of the knights promises to kill the maid if she is found to be lying. She assures those present that she saw him give the knight a certain thing right outside His Excellency's study and heard him order him to kill the emperor. The prince asks the Archduke where he was at sunrise today. Eynard replies that he was at his mansion preparing to enter the palace. Teresia asks to bring the head of the guard to verify the certificate. According to the list provided, the Archduke did not enter the palace at dawn, but at 9 o'clock in the morning, so the prince concludes that there is no truth in the maid's words. Eynard thinks that this meeting itself is ridiculous, as if the officials are influenced by unreasonable examinations, and he cannot read the maid's mind. She's definitely under the same seal spell, but unlike other people who have been sealed, her mind is intact, and it's obvious at this meeting that she has a purpose in protecting the testimony. The way the puppeteer is acting, Eynard has the impression that he wants to reveal his existence to him, as if to say that he is watching him. Eynard reports that there were guards outside his office all night, and if you ask them, they will confirm that nothing of the sort happened, and that even before the session began, according to the emperor, who regained consciousness, the attacker was hiding in his office. It follows that the offender was waiting for him just as he did at the coronation. And if it had been his doing, he would have acted differently. The prince informs everyone that under the circumstances, he does not think it is reasonable to suspect the Archduke of anything, and asks that the maid who lied on the stand be taken away. He declares the meeting adjourned. Suddenly, the prince is informed that the maid suddenly fell to the floor and died after vomiting blood, and that she had taken poison. The prince ends the meeting. Eynard asks Sade to find out more about the maid, from who she has been seeing lately to her personal details and travel routes. Eynard wonders who is behind all this. Teresia is certainly a conniving old man, but there is nothing in his mind to suggest he was involved, and he just took the opportunity to get rid of him. He'll need more time to figure it out and get Sade's investigations in first. A week later, the writer wakes up thinking that every day after visiting Armand, she has been practicing her divine power control and is getting very tired of it. Eynard is so busy with this case that he hasn't been seen at all lately, and come to think of it, Eynard was accused at the meeting. Knowing him, he's kept the case quiet. The girl smells a strong odor of flowers and assumes that Dorothy left the window open. Looking around the room, she sees many different flowers and wonders what they are. Dorothy explains that the flowers were sent by his superior Bonaparte. Noble people give each other gifts before they get engaged, something like gemstones, flowers, furnishings. Eynard was so sincere, he impressed even her. Of course there are gifts not only from the Archduke, but also from other aristocrats who wanted to congratulate the princess. The writer asks the maid what the occasion is for all these gifts. Dorothy replies that it is all in honor of the engagement. When asked by the princess why she doesn't know about it, the maid replies that his superior Bonaparte announced yesterday that in half a month an engagement ceremony will be held with Her Highness Princess Iona. G resents Eynard doing whatever he wants. The writer decides to practice using the divine power. She has already succeeded in dyeing a flower with this power. But when she tries to revive them, nothing comes, and more wilting flowers come to life. If this continues, she'll become a death priest. Perhaps she's missing something, or should use her power in some other way. Dorothy tells the princess that Archduke Bonaparte has arrived. The girl hides all the evidence under the table and lets Eynard in. The Archduke asks Dorothy to leave as he wants to speak to Her Majesty alone. The writer asks him what could have happened in the middle of the workday. Eynard does not have time to finish the news, as G immediately replies that she knows that he is going to have an engagement in half a month. Dinar has it from the maid. Eynard adds to this news that first, there will be a ball in honor of the emperor's birthday, and only the next day the engagement. The writer tells the Archduke that she knows that he has always had such a character, but that there are things she is worried about, namely that she will learn of her engagement through other people. She asks to be informed in advance of things that concern her, and to observe decorum. Eynard asks the next question about the attack on the emperor, wondering if she knows anything about the incident, the reasons, the ending of the event, or at least who is behind it. G. Karen says that it was not in the plot of her novel, but no matter how hard she tries to remember, she doesn't know who could have benefited from it. Eynard asks him to let him know if he has any ideas. G apologizes to him for suspecting him. At that moment, the Archduke is informed that there is a job that needs to be done urgently. Before leaving the princess's room, Eynard realizes that for some reason, he has not heard her thoughts this time. Late at night, the writer continues to practice using divine power. Because she can't do anything, she's run out of power. No matter what she does, she can't get the flowers to bloom. Cesare is due to arrive soon, so she decides to stop there and just ask him to tell her more about the revitalization process. G notices that the balcony door is open, and at that moment, Cesare enters the room wounded in the side. He explains that someone broke into his room and attacked him. He barely managed to escape. G notices the Cardinal's wound and thinks that it is so similar to the attack on Armand. Cesare asks the princess to treat him as soon as possible because while he was fighting with that man, he spent all his strength and therefore cannot heal himself. The writer doesn't know what to do since she hasn't mastered recovery yet. However, if she can't heal the Cardinal, he will die. She has no choice but to cope, and to do so, she must put her thoughts in order. She places her hands on the cardinal's wound, and a bright light comes out of them. Ji rejoices at having accomplished the task by using divine power. However, after using that power, the blood did not stop. Cesare begins to laugh. The princess asks the cardinal why he is laughing since the wound has not healed. The cardinal apologizes to the princess for deceiving her and takes out a transparent bag of artificial blood. He explains that he thought she was having trouble recovering, so he decided to administer shock therapy. Thanks to this ruse, the princess was an instant success. The writer is pissed off. She tells the cardinal that if he does it again, she will not let it go. Cesare once again apologizes to the princess and reminds her of her success. The girl replies that it is not important now. Cesare decides to change the subject and asks the princess why there are so many flowers in her room. Jo explains that it is a gift from her fiancé, but not all of them were given by him. The gifts from the aristocrats are stacked together. At that moment, she notices that Cesare's face seems to float, and at the same moment she faints. Cesare realizes that the divine power has stopped circulating in the princess's body, seemingly without any signs of trouble. He notices the marks of poisoning on her neck and assumes that she has interacted with poisonous flowers. On the table, he notices a flower whose pollen contains a paralyzing poison, a night trap. During the day, it is in a state of bud, but at nightfall it blooms and sprays the poison. Though the pollen has entered his body, it has been neutralized by divine power. However, Jonah did not fully master his power and lost consciousness. If he had not been around that night, her breathless body would have been discovered tomorrow morning. Cesare decides to start with first aid. It is necessary to check the room to prevent the poison from spreading. This will aid in recovery. He decides to take the princess to the balcony first thing. Sometime later, the princess comes to her senses. She asks the cardinal what happened. Cesare tells her the princess inhaled the pollen of a poisonous flower and fainted. As soon as he realized this, he immediately took the flower out of the room, so it is now safe. He suggests that maybe someone is targeting her life. G assumes it's Armand. However, he hasn't threatened her in a while. She's been too relaxed lately and doesn't even know what's going to happen in this world. She can't let Armand find out about this case. If she did, she'd have to tell him about the lessons in controlling divine power, and explaining it to him would be a hassle. She was sure that Armand was the only one she had to watch out for in this world, but someone else wanted her dead. His daughter Lavian comes to Prince Teresia's office. He asks her why she came here at this hour. Lavian tells her father that she is sad about something. The engagement of his superior Armand and Her Highness Iona is approaching. She can't believe it, as she has been dreaming of His Excellency Armand all the time, and for some reason she is thinking more and more of creepy things, how she wishes Her Highness would disappear. Lavian apologizes to her father for telling him such things, and thinks that she is a terrible daughter because it is not the fault of Her Highness the Princess. The prince promises his daughter that he will do everything to make her dream come true. Lavian says that even though His Excellency Armand chose Her Highness Iona, she still wanted to be friends with the princess and sent her a gift. But Her Highness didn't seem to like it, so next time she will send something else. A servant comes to the prince, and he lets his daughter go. Left alone with his subordinate, he asks him about having taken care of the maid. The man replies that he has taken care of her, and no one will know anything about it. The prince recalls that last time a package arrived right after the meeting. It said that it was necessary to hide the body of the maid who had committed suicide and secretly dispose of it. He was a little surprised that the maid was also involved in the packages. The prince is not sure of the identity of the sender, but he knows he's helping him. These packages are like a blessing from the goddess of luck. If all instructions are followed, their family will prosper for centuries. Meanwhile, Sade reports to the Archduke that an investigation has been made into the suicide of a maid. This girl has only recently started working at the palace, but there is no information about how she got here. The other maids know nothing but her name. Armand suggests we stop here. Whoever is behind this, the trail continues to break, and if it continues like this, it will be difficult to find out what is going on. Armand sent the bride a lot of jewelry. G sees it in her room and thinks that if they were to celebrate another engagement, the Rose Palace would be destroyed. Even if he's going out of his way to be a decent groom, he has to be careful. She can't be throwing out gifts, and she should tell Einard to stop sending them. The Archduke enters the room and says that since they are gifts, she can safely accept them. G asks Einard when he came. He replies that he just came to make sure everything was okay, but apparently everything is fine. Einard explains his large number of gifts as something everyone does before an engagement, and suggests that she learn a little about engagements. Einard gives her an expensive necklace and earrings, and asks the bride to wear it during the ceremony. G asks the Archduke why he is trying to make this event so grand. After all, this engagement is under contract. Einard asks the girl what she thinks of him. G wondered why Einard was suddenly so serious. She is at a loss. If he continues to look like that, she won't be able to answer properly. The writer tells Einard that of course at first she thought of him simply as a character in the novel. The world of the novel is far from the one she lived in, so if she could go back then, she would never see the people here again. At first, she thought to just do what they say to save her life, but now she thinks that this world is another reality. The burning rays of the sun, the smell of freshly baked bread labeled Dorothy, and even he who lives in this place is not just a line in a book. At first she was afraid of Einard, but now she thinks he's a trustworthy man. Einard says nothing to the bride, that in 3 days they will go to the ball in honor of Armand's birthday, and asks her to be ready. He leaves the princess's room. G is concerned that she has answered his question too frankly. Ayman stands in the corridor thinking about the fact that up until now, he has kept Jonah alive, thinking it was just normal curiosity about someone from another world. But now he can't understand what the reason is. He tells Seydu that he can stop following Jonah. The Emperor's birthday is coming up. Viscount Luke wishes His Majesty a happy birthday. At that moment, Armand is informed of the arrival of Princess Iona and Archduke Einard Bonaparte. Einard bows and asks the Emperor to accept his congratulations. Armand thanks him and says he looks forward to their engagement. The princess gives her brother a dagger and explains that she was worried about him because of what happened a few days ago. She wants Armand to carry it with him at all times for self-defense. The Emperor thanks her and says that it is the best gift he has ever received and announces the beginning of the ball. During the ball, G's face has gotten stiff because she has to smile all the time. She decides to go out on the balcony, the fresh air giving her the will to live. She glances at Einard and notices that he is not even tired, even though he is always talking. What was expected of an archduke? A whole other level. A priest of the highest rank, Yuto, comes to the balcony. He tells the princess that he is eager to meet her. G recalls that Dorothy once told her that there are 2 young men among the priests. One holds a high position in the church, and the other is a cardinal. She asks Yuto why he was so eager to meet her. The priest replies to the princess that there was nothing special about his visit. He just wanted to ask her what she thought about her acquired divine power. Or, more interestingly, what would happen if someone could read Her Highness's mind? The writer senses the danger coming from him. She tells him that she is not a priest, so she doesn't know much about divine power, which is impossible. Ito grins and asks the princess how she can say it can't be. G seems to think that the priest already knows everything and mentally asks for help. Cesare comes to the balcony and asks what the 2 of them are discussing. Ito, without removing the smile from his face, tells him that they were not discussing anything and that he just wanted to greet Her Highness. The cardinal tells the priest that Cecilia was looking for him. Alone with the princess, the cardinal asks her if Joe has spoken to her about something. Joe decides not to talk about it, as she considers it a delicate subject. She says that Yuto only greeted her and asks the cardinal if he likes such banquets. Cesare replies that there is nothing he can do about it, as Cecilia insisted, so he had to go out, which is why he often tries to escape. She throws her robe over the princess with the excuse that the nights are getting colder and it is better not to dress so lightly. The princess thanks the cardinal for his concern. Without taking his eyes off Iona, Cesare wonders why he is so concerned about this girl, whether it is because she is different from the rumored princess or because of something else. He asks the princess to get dressed and leaves first. It is the day of the engagement ceremony of the only Princess Eiklet and the highly influential Archduke Bonaparte. Many people have gathered to witness their engagement ceremony, a grand event overshadowing the recent banquet. At the emperor's wave of the emperor's hand, the ceremony begins under the banners. Drinking from a gilded glass, Eynard asks the bride if she has learned anything about engagements. G answers that she has learned something in class and has been practicing, so she is confident. Eynard kisses his bride before telling her that there is a moment that is not in the books. Stroking her palm with the ring, he tells her that now she can't get away from him. G sits alone in the banquet hall, and every time he looks at Eynard, she remembers their kiss. Levian comes up to her, and Sarah asks the princess why she is not enjoying the banquet and is sitting alone on the sidelines. She notices that today, Her Highness was very beautiful, and she could not take her eyes off her. And His Excellency, they seem happy, but the Emperor seems very confused. The writer remembers that Armand has not been seen since the beginning of the banquet. Apparently, he is very upset and needs to be found. She bids Lady Teresia farewell and leaves her company. G is wandering around the outside of the palace since a patrolman said he saw him coming this way. Although she has left the hall, finding Armand is harder than she thought. Nearby, she spots someone with golden hair, and thinking it's Armand, she calls out to him. However, this man is not Armand at all, but a Yuto priest. He turns around and greets the princess. The girl panics and says that she is mistaken and will go to look for him. Yuto doesn't let Her Majesty go because he's been waiting for her. He opens a huge red portal explaining that there is a place where they must go and he will take her there. The princess disappears into the portal, leaving only the handkerchief of her dress behind. Meanwhile, Baron Pierrot approaches the Archduke to congratulate him on his engagement and says that he would like to discuss with him the question of the management of the knights. But Eynard does not let him finish, as he notices that the place has become suspiciously quiet. He turns back and sees that the place where the princess was sitting is empty. He asks Sade where Jonah went. Sade replies that he saw her leave the banquet hall, and when asked why he didn't follow her, he reminds the Archduke that he told him to stop following her. He only saw Her Highness leave the banquet hall and did nothing further. Eynard goes in search of his missing bride. When he goes outside, he finds the turquoise handkerchief Jonah was wearing and realizes that she has disappeared. He realizes that she has disappeared and realizes that she has disappeared. Cesare, meanwhile, is alone, thinking that Cecilia has slapped him again for not attending the banquet. She had asked him to fulfill at least the minimum duties of a cardinal. Cesare was going to attend the banquet, but when he saw the kiss, he could not help himself. Eynard bursts in and shows him a handkerchief with divine power and asks him to find out whose it is. Cesare is outraged that the Archduke has come to him like this and demands it. Eynard explains that it is Jonah's and that it has been disappearing. Cesare asks if that is why he is going to find the owner of the divine power and thinks the priests have something to do with it. Eynard replies that he can't deny the possibility. Anyway, he asks for help while the divine power can still be traced. Cesare takes the handkerchief from the Archduke to test his hunch and asks him not to talk nonsense. Using his divine power, Cesare discovers that the handkerchief contains the power of Yuto. He remembers that Yuto has informed him that he has been asked to return from the church today, so he will have to bow out and will not be able to attend the engagement ceremony. Eynard finds this highly suspicious, as the handkerchief contains his divine power. Cesare explains that Yuto is not the kind of man to do something like this. Eynard reminds him that where Jonah disappeared, there's a trace of this guy's divine power. Even if he didn't do it, he still has something to do with Jonah's disappearance and needs to be investigated. Now he asks for his help as a cardinal, and asks him to contact the church to find this Judo and hand him over to the Iklit Empire. Cesare promises that he will make a decision after the church's investigation is complete. All this time, Cecilia stood outside the door and learned that Princess Jonah had disappeared. She had heard too much and wondered if she should tell the emperor. G wakes up in the wagon and, feeling cold, notices that she is sitting in the water and can't move a finger. Yuto, hearing that Her Highness is awake, explains to her that her body is paralyzed because of the holy water and will be able to move if she sits like this for a while. He apologizes for bothering her, but someone said he'd like to see her and is waiting for her at the church. In the late afternoon, Ji sits in her room thinking that she can move now, but she still feels weak. A nun brings the princess some clothes, a towel, and a book for her to enjoy. She asks Her Highness to call her if she needs anything. The writer finds it funny that the kidnapper brought her here against her will and now treats her as a guest. Yuto disappeared immediately upon arrival and never showed up again. She promises to hit the priest as soon as they meet, but before that, she will get out of here. Einar tells Cesare that since Jonah's disappearance, the exits from the capital have been sealed off. Everything has been turned upside down, but she has not been found. The only clue is that one wagon left the city late at night. They probably left the capital before they did anything. He asks the Cardinal if he's making any progress. Cesare replies that he immediately sent a letter to the Pope, but received no reply, and is unlikely to get any reaction as he has a pile of unread letters on his desk. So he contacted the other priests and asked them about Juto. They said that he had recently returned, and that a girl with blonde hair had appeared in the church afterward. But I couldn't say for sure if it was Jonah or not. It would be nice to catch Juto and start the investigation at once, but we need the permission of the Pope. But as he said, there is no answer from him. But if the Emperor were to ask, things would move much faster. Cesare asks Einar if he has informed Armand of Jonah's disappearance. The Archduke replies that there is no need. The Cardinal realizes that he doesn't want the situation to get worse, but thinks he's a fool anyway. Cecilia listened to the conversation again and immediately ran to tell the Emperor that his sister was missing and that she was now in the church. Armand asks the priestess if she is sure. Cecilia tells him that she overheard Einar and Cesare talking, so she thinks it is reliable information. Armand recalls that after the ceremony his sister was nowhere to be seen. He asked where she was, but was told she was at Bonaparte's. He thanks the priestess for the information, for if it were not for her, he would not have learned anything. He is Jonah's brother first, and only then the Emperor. The priestess takes the Emperor's hand and asks him not to worry as she is sure that Her Highness will be fine. She doesn't know why Yuto's brother would do such a thing, but he wouldn't hurt the princess, so she advises the Emperor to take care of his health. Armand thanks the priestess for always showing up at the right moment and reassuring him. Cecilia promises to find out more and asks the Emperor not to overwork and not to forget to rest. With her face buried in the pillow, Ji, knowing she can't be heard, asks to be taken out of here. Since she got here, she's never been able to leave the room. Eats what she's given, reads what she's given, like she's in prison. The girl tried to get out at night, but it turns out she's been guarded at the door all night. The nun brings the princess new towels and a book. She also informs her that she is invited to dinner tonight. The princess asks the woman who invited her, but she says nothing, instead promising to come back to see her off. The writer assumes that the invitation must be from the kidnapper, and during dinner she can figure out who he is. Sometime later, she arrives at the appointed place for dinner, and before going inside, she thinks about playing the role of a shallow princess to distract attention. Upon entering the dining room, Ji sees a man in a white robe standing in front of her. He greets the princess. The writer recognizes him. This man is the Pope, Alexander. At the end of the meal, Alexander asks Her Highness if she enjoyed her dinner. He knows that she had only been in one room before, so she hardly had a chance to eat properly, so he tried to make her enjoy it. The princess replies to Park Roman that everything was delicious and thanks him for his efforts. Ji knows that he has locked her up, but she doesn't know if he really ordered her kidnapping. Alexander tells the princess that he does not know how she got there. He had originally ordered that she be delivered in comfort, but was disrespectful when he asked to escort her. Ji Kalana to the fact that the Pope calmly admits that it was his order. She replies that it was a little wet, but she's fine. In that case, Alexander suggests we get down to business. He'd like Her Majesty to do him a favor. He'd like her to help him get rid of Einar. This child can read other people's minds. Such a man breaks the rules of the world, and if he is not stopped, he will one day destroy the Iklith Empire and create chaos. As the voice of God, he cannot allow that to happen. The writer does not understand his request because it has not even happened, and it is just an assumption. The content of the novel has already changed so much that the future cannot be predicted. In addition, Einard's ability to hear thoughts was hers. Alexander says he realizes that it will be hard for her to give an answer so soon. Einard is clever. He can recognize her thoughts. To avoid being discovered so easily, he will help her a little. A bright light emanates from the palm of his hand that he pointed at the princess. Alexander explains that he has just made it easier for her divine power to manifest. All this time her powers were unstable, so her thoughts could be read. But now Einard will know nothing about her. He asks her to consider his words and waits for her to agree. Leaving the dining hall, Ji ponders the fact that the Pope knows more than she realized. He spoke too easily on Einard's ability and her divine power. So gloriously long ago he had known of them. Though he smiled as he spoke, it was obvious he hated Einard. Alexander spoke with such certainty that Einard would be the cause of destruction. These words came from undisguised disgust, or he knows something about something. In the novel, Einard and the Pope hardly interacted, but there must be a reason for this hatred. Back in her room, the princess meets Said, his sudden appearance startling her. Said asks Her Highness if she is all right. The princess asks Said how he got here. He tells her that he came here on His Excellency's orders to see if his fiancée was safe, but that the Archduke had not arrived. Said has made sure that the princess is safe, and now he will protect her until she leaves this place. The writer was relieved to see a familiar face. All this time she had been worried, and yet she was a little sad that Einard had not come. A few days later, the Pope is informed that a guest has arrived. Alexander is a little sorry that this guest arrived before he had waited for Jonah's reply. He asks to escort the guest and bring Her Highness Jonah. Guided to the Pope's office by a priest, Ji is angry that she's been locked up, and now she's being led somewhere else again. First they lock her up, and then they come when they need to. There is no sign of Seda, no word from Einard either, so she thinks about waiting for the moment and escaping. The door to the cabinet is opened. Alexander stands next to Einard and asks Her Majesty to come quickly, and informs her that the Iklit Empire has arrived to escort her. Ji didn't even think Einard would come to the church himself. The Pope says that he is declining. He was honored to see the princess and hopes that they can meet again. Standing in front of Einard, the princess is embarrassed and does not know what to say to him. She asks the Archduke how he got here, and says that she never imagined he would come. Without answering, Einard silently pulls his bride into his arms, an inconspicuous and useless princess of the Iklit Empire. That's how Einard thought of Princess Iona before her body was taken over by another man. At first he thought of using her, but then experienced resentment, curiosity, interest, worry over her disappearance, then calm after finding her. Now he promises he'll never let his fiancée go. Ji doesn't understand why Einard hugged her so suddenly. She's so confused even an owl can't tell. The embrace is so tight that she can't even move. The girl asks Einard to let her go as she can't breathe. He asks the princess what the Pope said to her when he passed by. Ji says it was nothing much, just that it would be nice if she came by again. She can't tell him that the Pope offered her a deal while he was away. At this point she remembers that Einard can read minds, but there is no reaction on his face. Alexander promised her he would keep her thoughts hidden from the Archduke. Besides, they're in a church, so the very air must be imbued with divine power. If you think about it that way, Einard is most likely in pain and distress here, yet for some reason, he has personally come to take her away from here. Einard tells his bride that there is a carriage waiting outside for them to return to Iklit. Ji asks for a minute to get her things out of her room. The writer collects her dress from the ceremony, earrings, necklace, and wedding ring. She reflected on the fact that if she thought back to their first meeting, Einard had definitely changed. Maybe even if it was just a coincidence. If this was the case, she could see a good ending to this affair. The girl hears footsteps behind her, and thinking it is Einard, reminds him that she said she would come and there is no need to come after her. She turns around and sees Armand in front of her, and asks him how he came to be here. The Emperor asks his sister not to scream, and explains that he snuck in here with a few Imperial knights to save her. Noticing the phrase about the Emperor's knights, she wondered if they had others, and if Armand had sneaked in, it was not an official visit. The emperor tells his sister that he missed her very much. Even though he is only a semblance of an emperor without power and strength, he still wanted to save his sister. The princess tells her brother that Eynard has already arrived and asks if Armand sent him to her. The Archduke needs the emperor's permission to visit the church. Why doesn't Armand know anything, as if all information is classified? The princess asks Bora what he meant when he said he was like an emperor without power. Isn't he an emperor who can make decisions in all matters and participates in the politics of the country? Armand tells his sister that even before his coronation, he made a contract with the Archduke Bonaparte with the condition of guaranteed security for her. He has betrayed his power to the Archduke, and if he does not continue to do so, he will not be able to leave the imperial palace. Eynard says that because the young priestess overheard their conversation, he only guessed that the emperor would also find out what had happened. But he never thought that it would come to the point where he and the knights would sneak into the church. And no matter how hard he, the emperor without powers, tried now, he overdid it. The princess replies to Eynard that he is the only one who has overdone it. Ji thinks she is stupid because she knew exactly what kind of man he was and should have been wary of him. She resents the fact that Eynard made a contract with Armand for her safety and reminds him that she promised to give him power in exchange for Armand's safety. But not even realizing that everything was already in his hands, she tried to do something about it. How agonized Armand was when she said that. She reproaches Eynard for not using other people for gain and asks if he had fun watching her floundering in his grip. Eynard turns around and reminds the princess that the carriage is waiting for them. Ji shouts after him that he is a terrible man. The door closes. The girl thinks to herself that from the very beginning, Eynard only cared about her value. No reason to be disappointed, and yet she thought things would be different now. A few days later at the imperial palace, the princess is sitting on the veranda, silently pulling petals from a rose. Dorati brings tea to the princess and asks her what happened, as she is still pulling petals from the flowers presented by His Excellency after returning to the imperial palace. Without getting an answer to this question, the maid asks the next question about whether she enjoyed her stay at the Bonaparte mansion. Ji replies to Dorothy that she has enjoyed everything. No one knows what happened except a few people. Not that she was kidnapped, not that she met the Pope, not even that Eynard and Armand were in the church. Eynard seems to be making sure the rumors don't spread. Nothing has changed in the imperial palace, as if it was all just a dream except for one thing. Eynard doesn't come to see her anymore. Of course, Ji doesn't want to see that asshole's face, but he hasn't even come to make excuses. He's not trying to seem like a good fiancé at all. Anyone would be angry if he was treated like that. Of course she's very angry, so she decides she has to get rid of Eynard and live with Armand. She didn't even know about the Emperor's contract with Eynard. Armand always smiled so brightly at her, saying he would make a good emperor. It was so easy for the writer to believe that Roman's world was different from this one. She should have taken better care of Armand. He must be having a hard time, so she decides to check on him. After his return, Armand began to live in a different place. His new residence is at the corner of the Imperial Palace. He lives in the Old Star Palace. The person who discharged about the move was Eynard. The reason why Eynard came out to the high society was to treat the injured Armand. Though really it's all about leaving the palace at will. In any case, no one knows what happened in the church. The princess assumes that Armand was very surprised when he heard about her and Eynard's pact, and most likely he is now tormented by conscience. When Ji enters the Palace of the Stars, she notices a strange commotion of maids and asks them what has happened. The maids apologize to the princess for not seeing her and tell her that His Majesty the Emperor has fainted. They send one of the servants to fetch the Cardinal, but he has not arrived yet. Ji comes to the room where the Emperor lies unconscious. The maid in the room tells Her Majesty that after His Majesty fell down, his temperature rose. They tried to bring it down, but it would not come down. The princess asks the maid to leave the room. Ji puts her hand on Armand's forehead and feels a high fever. She assumes it's probably because he's overexerted himself after being wounded. She decides to use divine power to heal her brother. Ji has used all her powers, and now she just has to wait for Armand to wake up. Cesare approaches her from behind and says that even though he has seen the princess's power, he is still amazed. He checks His Majesty's temperature and tells her that if he stays quiet for a while, he'll be fine. Ji was afraid it wouldn't work. Cesare suggests that the princess leave the castle to follow the emperor. He thinks of it all the time when he sees her. He's sorry her talents are locked away in the imperial palace of Eclitus. If she is officially confirmed to have divine power, she can live freely off of it. Even if the church doesn't approve of such behavior, she won't be able to restrict the princess. The vast outside world is more suitable for the princess than this cramped palace. Cesare is also disgusted by the stuffiness of the church and would like to travel the world with her. The princess asks him why he suddenly says this, because as a cardinal, he could travel with a nicer person. Cesare explains that he wanted it to be Her Highness because he likes her and asks what she thinks of his proposal. The princess tells Cesare that you don't think it's worth discussing such things near a sick man's bedside. Leaving, the cardinal tells her that she can give her answer another time. Ji never thought Cesare would treat her like this. She only thought of him as a close friend, so she doesn't know what answer to give him. Because of this sudden confession, their relationship had become a bit strained. Time was running out. The full moon was already gone. Cesare continued to teach her how to control the divine power as if nothing had happened. He was completely focused on the class so as not to burden her. Ji still couldn't respond to his acknowledgement. She had always wanted to escape from the imperial palace. From the moment she entered this world, every day was filled with anxiety. She was used to this strange life, trying her best to survive. Hard, but better as a princess than outside the palace. She held on to that thought. But now that Cesare had suggested that they leave this place together, she thought it was really not a bad option. But for some reason now, she remembered the face of the man who had to go to the church to find her. Armand finds out that his fiancée went to the Star Palace and calls her stubborn. He goes over in his head everything Ji said to him that day in the church. He never thought about what she thought. He was just intoxicated by her. Armand decides to talk to her. Mikhail walks into his office and gives him some news. After a few days, Ji visits the Star Palace again. She is already used to visiting it every day. Cesare says that Armand will be all right. The girl notices that all the maids are stirring again and asks them what the problems are. The maids reply that there is no problem. It can't be called a problem, but Her Majesty should see it. Walking into her brother's room, the princess sees an adult version of Armand in front of her. It shocks Ji. The maids realize they're not imagining things. They don't understand when and how he has grown so much. The princess sits her brother on a chair and asks the priest to explain how this happened. The priest greets Her Majesty and replies that this is the first time he has encountered such a case. However, when he examined the emperor, he noticed a trace of divine power and the possibility that this is the cause. Ji wonders if someone might have shared the divine power with Armand and remembers that she herself was the culprit. That's why Armand has grown so much. Armand tells the priest that he heard that the Cardinal was doing the cure. The priest replies that if you compare the Cardinal's power to this one, it will be slightly different. At that moment, the arrival of Archduke Armand is announced. Armand greets His Majesty and says that along with the news of his awakening, he has received a strange report that he looks different. He notes that Armand has indeed changed. The priest tells His Majesty how it came about. Armand replies that divine power affecting growth sounds dangerous. Even the Pope with the most powerful divine power can't enlarge human bodies. And someone with much more power has not only sneaked into the palace, but has also entered His Majesty's house. So it is necessary to find the culprit. Armand agrees with the Archduke's words. The princess reminds them that Armand is feeling fine after all, which means that maybe that man wanted to cure him. Who knows what will happen if he tries to find him? Armand insists that they must find the man. Whether he is rewarded or punished, they must first find out his identity. He says he will prepare a meeting. So far, the lie has been able to hide, but because of Armand and his stupid speech, it will not work. But since he can't read her mind, she calls him a fool in her mind. A few days later, a meeting begins in the main meeting room. Everyone is discussing the fact that Her Highness Princess Jonah is attending the meeting, even though she has not been interested in politics before. Ji overhears these conversations and thinks that she would not want to be here either, but she must find out what they will be talking about. Word of the Emperor's arrival. When people saw Armand as an adult, they were convinced that the rumors were true. It was hard to believe the rumors. Armand declares the topic of today's meeting to be the change in his body, as correctly noticed by the landmark lords. According to the priest, the cause is the divine power of another person, but none of the clergy except the Cardinal approached him while he was unconscious. During the inspection, it was found out that that power did not belong to the Cardinal. In addition, the trace of the power does not belong to any priest who has been in the palace. It is not known what the perpetrator's purpose was, but for the safety of the imperial palace, the identity of this person must be revealed. So he proposes a massive investigation to test the divine power of everyone in the palace. Armand asks the opinion of the honorable lords. Ji thinks that Armand said so. She can't resist. The lords clarify whether they are correct, that they will check everyone in the palace from nobles to servants. In addition, they are not satisfied with the fact that their reputation may suffer, so no one will agree to it. The writer reflects on what a test this is for Armand. Despite the fact that the words belong to the Emperor, the nobles continue to whisper to each other. She does not like this test either, but she will object to it. Eynard raises his hand and informs everyone that he supports the Emperor's opinion. Not to leave even a potential danger in the palace, they must find the owner of this divine power. And if there are any dissenters, he asks them to stop talking and make their opinions clear. One of the members of the commission also decides to support the Emperor's opinion, as he also believes that they must find the one who dared to touch the Emperor. This is a matter of the utmost importance. The nobles must set an example for the others. Joe calls them toadies to himself, as they changed their minds only after Eynard had stood up for the idea. Eynard informs that the decision is unanimous, and he will prepare for the inspection. As she leaves the meeting room, the writer reflects that things are going well so far. First, the servants are inspected, then the know-it-alls, and only then comes the imperial family. She must find a way not to get caught until it is her turn to be checked, and remembers that she can be checked by Cesare. Since she belongs to the imperial family, she's likely to be checked by a cardinal. Plus, Cesare has helped hide her powers so far. G decides to talk to him beforehand to be sure. He says he will come tomorrow to give her a lesson, but before that, she must prepare an answer for him. The next day, the writer comes to the Palace of the Stars. She didn't think of coming. Armand had already woken up, but her feet brought her here again. She's probably just worried about yesterday's meeting. When she goes into her brother's room, she asks him how he feels, and if it bothers him that his body has changed. Armand replies that he is completely healthy, but as for the new body, he is not used to the increased circumference and constantly bumps into things because of the lengthened arms and legs. However, after the body enlarged, he feels as if he has been reborn. Before that, when he went to meetings, he did nothing there and never gave his opinion. But yesterday he called a meeting, voiced his topic, and gave his opinion on it. He didn't care about other people's whispers. Armand had never experienced this before. He felt as if he was capable of anything. He even wanted to find the holder of divine power to thank him. The princess hears some noises at the door and assumes someone has come. Armand assumes it is the priestess Cecilia. She helped him so that he wanted to meet her again. The writer recalls that Cecilia was the main character in the novel. This is the first time they will see each other, so she is excited. The princess tells Armand that, as his sister, she should thank her. The priestess enters the emperor's room, but when she sees Armand, she is horrified and immediately runs away. The emperor asks his sister why Cecilia left. G catches up with the priestess and asks her why she left so suddenly. Cecilia asks Her Majesty to forgive her for her insolence. The princess asks if she dislikes her brother so much. Cecilia explains that she ran away because she saw how much His Majesty had changed. It was as if he had grown up and she was surprised. The princess says that even though Armand looks different, he is still her sweet brother, and asks why she doesn't like her new look. Cecilia replies to the princess that it is not that at all. The princess asks the priestess to tell Armand these words because he must be very worried about what has happened. Cecilia agrees to do so and returns to the emperor's room. Late at night, Ji waits for Cesare and reflects that the main reason for her hesitation before answering was Armand. After she learned his true position in the palace, she could not leave her brother alone. But seeing Armand today, she thought that now he could manage on his own. The writer sees a man holding the power in his hands, not the child she was supposed to save. At first she was going to run away with Armand, but it was time to choose what was best for her, namely to go with Cesare. He is the perfect choice. Cesare enters the princess's chambers through the balcony and proposes to start the lesson. The princess tells the cardinal that she has something to say to him and has already prepared herself, but for some reason she cannot open her lips. She thought she was sure of her decision, that she had already made a choice, but she can't say a word. The writer thought about the fact that she can't just run away because there are people in the palace who care about her and people she loves. She would like to change the world with them and would like to lead it to a different ending with Einard. The princess apologizes to the cardinal for not accepting his proposal. Cesare asks her if he can find out the reason. The princess says that what he told her then is true. She is uncomfortable in the palace and would like to run away as soon as she gets the chance, but can't just forget the man who sought her out to save her. Cesare asks if it's about Einard. Cesare thanks her for her honest answer and informs her that the divine power control lessons will no longer be held. The lessons had long since come to an end. He was looking for a meeting with the princess and used their lessons as an excuse. And since the lessons are over, and not the answer he heard, they have no reason to meet. The cardinal bids the princess farewell and leaves her room. After that, their paths never crossed again. The Orchid Palace, where the church representatives now reside, is far away from the Rose Palace. So they must have met him by chance, but she didn't see him, as if he were avoiding her. It seemed to her that Cesare was not the kind of man who would take rejection so badly. He left without even giving her a chance to respond, so she wants to meet him and talk it over. Dorati brings the princess a letter of invitation from Teresia Lavian, the daughter of the family. G recalls that they have not seen her since the ceremony, and since she invites them, they can meet once more. Lavian thanks Her Highness for visiting them. The princess replies to the lady that she wanted to see her herself. Lavian tells her that she has recently discovered a rare type of tea. It has been hard to find, and she would like to give it to Her Majesty. The writer thinks that she used to be wary of Lavian and avoided her, but she congratulated her during the ceremony and invited her to give her tea, so she thinks she was too prejudiced against her. Lavian notices the princess's hand and asks her why she is not wearing her wedding ring. She replies to the lady that she had taken it off and left it in her room. In fact, she didn't want to think about Einard, so she left it there. Lavian tells Her Majesty that the Archduke doesn't like his gifts to go unused. He was so meticulous as a child, you had to think about every detail and only then go to the meeting. The princess smilingly suggests that there's nothing Lavian didn't know about him since she's known Einard since childhood. The maid Sophie brings tea, and the lady asks Iona to taste it. The princess takes a sip of the tea and says she dreamed it was very rich and smooth. Jo thinks about the fact that it has been so long since she last spent time with a girl her own age, and so she thinks it would be wonderful if their relationship stayed that way forever. Before saying goodbye, the princess tells Lavian that today was really fun, and it would be nice to meet like this more often. Lavian replies that she had fun too, and wishes Her Majesty a good journey. Lavian tells the maid Sophie that they have some tea left. It would be a shame to throw it away, so she offers it to her to try. Sophie thanks the Lord for giving her a taste of such an expensive item, and takes a sip. Lavian asks the maid how it tastes to her. Sophie replies to the lady that the tea is a little bitter, but she thinks there is something wonderful about it. The lady agrees that the flavor is a bit pungent. The maid's mouth starts to bleed. The tea mug breaks, and Sophie falls to the ground with tea poisoning. As we look at the dead maid, Lavian ponders why Jonah didn't fall the same way. She should have died or gone back to being a fool after taking the poison. She's annoyed that the princess isn't even wearing a wedding ring and says they're fine without one. She calls the Archduke by his first name, but it's all right because she's prepared another trap. G notices that the carriage is traveling faster than usual. The valve securing the wheel unscrews, and the carriage with the princess and the guards falls on its side in the middle of the road. Michael reports to the Archduke that the carriage carrying the princess overturned on the way back to the palace. Her Highness suffered only minor injuries. It is reported that after first aid her condition has stabilized. Eynard enters the princess's chamber. Cardinal Cesare and the maid Dorothy are standing at her bedside. The Archduke asks the cardinal why he is here, as the princess does not need treatment. Cesare explains that he came here at the maid's request. Eynard tells the cardinal that he can go back now. The treatment is over, and he asks everyone to leave. Cesare asks the Archduke what he can do after his fiancée has been traumatized. The Archduke's very existence is a nuisance in his opinion, and it is unclear how someone like him could be betrothed to Jonah. Einar replies that he knows that Iona possesses divine power, and that she has been training under his auspices to control it all this time, and has kept it from him. Cesare is outraged that Einar has been spying on his bride, and does not understand how she could have chosen someone like him. The princess wakes up to a noise and realizes from the voices that Eynard and Cardinal are here. Cesare tells the Archduke that he recently offered the princess to run away, and she refused and said that she liked Eynard better, so she asks him to cherish her and not to leave her. He leaves Iona's chamber. Eynard leaves the room as someone asked him to take some time. G jumps up abruptly from the bed and thinks that Cesare is crazy to tell Eynard about this. She doesn't know how she will look into Eynard's eyes now. Meanwhile, Levian ponders why the princess did not die either from the poison or after the carriage fell over. One can still believe that she survived the carriage overturn, but how to explain that nothing happened after taking the strong poison? There must be a reason. She decides to confess everything to her father and ask him to investigate. The lady greets her father. Hearing that his daughter has come to him, the prince multitudinously hides what he was reading behind his back and asks her about Tom what happened. Levian wonders what he was looking at. Come to think of it, her father would try to discuss it. Say he would do everything himself so she wouldn't worry. He has power in this empire, but he doesn't know how to use it. Father is a timid and indecisive man who is just trying to hold on to his current position. She has followed his words many times, but now she must get what she wants for herself. Levian explains to her father that she just wanted to say hello to him. After that day, G was never able to see Eynard again. He visited her a few times, but it was when she was asleep and apparently just checking up on her. With her head in her hands, she wonders why Eynard continues to keep his distance. Dorothy enters the room and asks Her Majesty how she is feeling. The princess replies to the maid that she is fine because she is not badly hurt. Dorothy is glad that Her Highness is well, and that they can start testing her divine power. Noticing the perplexed look on the princess's face, she tells her that she reported it yesterday, but apparently she didn't hear. She also tells her that the priest has arrived. G remembers that she was supposed to ask Cesare for an examination, but so much has happened that she forgot about it. But anyway, she's a member of the imperial family, so it must be the cardinal. But it is not Cesare who enters the room, but another blonde priest. He greets Her Majesty and tells her that he has been appointed to test her divine power and promises that they will finish the test quickly. The princess asks him to wait as she has a headache. In that case, the priest promises to do it even faster in just a second. The writer realizes it didn't work. The priest asks Her Majesty to close her eyes and touches her hand. A bright light illuminates the room, and G thinks that now she has definitely been burned. Said reports information regarding the case of Her Highness's broken carriage. At first glance, it looks like an accident, but upon re-examination, a part was found to be artificially damaged. He's made inquiries about the coachman, but he has no ties to any aristocrats, and he comes from a family loyal to the imperial family. It's hard to see him as a criminal. There's nothing suspicious about Therese's family either. But considering that the incident happened on the way out of the manor, we should not discount the Teresian family. Eynard asks Said to investigate the Teresias. We need to find out who visited them that day, and if anyone suspicious was seen there, if anything happened after the incident. Eynard is going over the cardinal's words in his head. He knows what brings everyone pleasure, but he had hoped that it would not affect at least Iona. His thoughts are interrupted by a message of trouble. The priest tested Her Majesty's divine powers. Seeing a bright light, Dorothy wonders what it was and decides to go out on the balcony to check something out. But when she opened the balcony door, she froze. The princess asks Dorothy what happened. The priest runs up to her and sees a black thing that looks like a black haze in front of her and says it is the devil. G recalls the legend of the founding of the empire, which says that in ancient times, when the world was peaceful and graceful, the devil appeared and devoured all things. When he was about to destroy the last island of life, a bright light burst out of the depths of the winter Lee and drove the demon away. The light turned human, and so the imperial family was born, and on the land where the light appeared, the empire of Icklith was erected. But from that point on, the princess thought it was just a legend. When she wrote the novel, she left only a couple of lines describing the local picture of the world. So why did something like this needle appear here? Seeing an arm dangling from a black cloud, the princess asks Dorothy to step away from the balcony. The cloud transforms into a huge yellow eye. G didn't want to use the divine power, but there is no other choice. She decides to use just a little as she needs to make the demon go away. The girl emits a bright light from her hands and directs it at the huge demon eye. She wanted to use a little, but she managed to hurt the demon anyway. The servants stand under the balcony of the princess's room and watch the devil. As in the legend, he can move even though he was wounded. G doesn't understand why the people standing around him didn't run away. She is sure that the demon wants to devour these people and become stronger. The Cardinal appears in the room just in time, and opening the vault of the holy book from where a bright light comes out, in an instant destroys the demonic eyes. The princess falls to her knees in helplessness and tries to understand what is going on here. A devil horror, kept in legends and consuming all living things. But no one believed in his existence. There is nothing to prove the truth of those stories. The tale passed from mouth to mouth, each time undergoing changes. People did not give the word its true meaning of horror until that day. There was no man who understood the meaning of the word. But when confronted face to face, people realized that it was a devil that existed only in the old tales. Eynard asks the bride if this is all the information. Jo replies that she asked Dorothy and the priest about the devil, but it's still strange. Eynard clarifies if it was in her novel. The writer explains that there was nothing like it, and the devil himself did not appear. She glanced at the Archduke and thought about what had happened, and came here and started questioning him right from the doorstep. She's a little confused about what happened and what Cesare said to Eynard, but does the man care as much as she does? Of course the devil's apparitions can have a devastating effect on the Archduke. G is glad that the chaos has left her out of the test of power. After the devil disappeared, Cesare spoke to Dorothy and the priest so that their words about the divine power used should match. Right after Cesare got rid of the devil, he told his brother priest that he would take care of Jonah and asked him to handle the situation. He asks Jonah if she's hurt. The princess replies that she is fine. The cardinal gives information regarding the divine power. Most likely the maid and the priest saw Her Highness using it. But he said he used his power from a distance, and they seemed to believe it. He also said he'll take her to be examined himself. Since he's the one who'll do the paperwork, there shouldn't be any problems. The princess thanks the cardinal for his help and wants to say something else, but he closes the door without listening. Maybe because of the devil's appearance, or maybe because he doesn't want to see her, Cesare hurriedly leaves. Still, G thinks there's no reason to avoid her so much. Eynard asks the writer if there was anything remarkable about the devil's behavior. G tells her that the devil does not appear in the novel, but she has some ideas about him. He unconsciously consumes everything in sight, but then he stopped. Perhaps because he realized the difference in power, or because he decided to become stronger by absorbing another person. It's just a guess, but he thinks he could be controlled by someone. Before leaving, Eynard tells the bride that he has never been able to read her mind since she returned from church, and he wonders why. G tells her that when they took her to the church, he kept her in some kind of country water, perhaps because of this, but she can't think of anything else. The writer wondered why Eynard had brought it up so suddenly. She thought he would be more persistent, and he just believed it. Perhaps Eynard knows something. But what did it matter if he did or not? She had already used divine power anyway. If you think about it, this was the first time she used divine power to attack. It was difficult to control this power, but would she be able to hide it further? Meanwhile, the elders visit the cardinal and ask for their time. Cesare asks them why they are coming in such a crowd. One of the priests tells them that they have examined the place where the devil appeared. However, in this place, they found another power besides his divine power. No one from the church has such pure power. They are curious to know who was there able to use this power, and are sure that the cardinal cannot be unaware of it. The cardinal replies that it is his power because no one but he could use it. Or perhaps it is that brother who seems to have a pure and blameless soul. The priest asks the cardinal not to evade the question. Cesare replies that he really does not know the answer to this question and cannot share with them what he does not know. In that case, they tell the cardinal that they will report the incident to the church themselves. Cesare asks them to do as they please. After the priests have left his office, the cardinal tells Cecilia that these people are like snakes and asks her to send the documents to the church. Cecilia asks what it is, if it is a report on the appearance of the devil. Cesare replies to the priestess that it is not a report, and they have stayed here too long, so it is time to return to the church. Dorothy informs the princess that the church representatives are coming back. They say they are going to leave the palace soon. G is surprised at this decision, because the devil has appeared. Shouldn't they stay and investigate? Dorothy suggests that they should be replaced by someone who knows more about demons. She remembers that there will be a farewell banquet before they leave. The princess resents the fact that they decided to have the feast at a time when the devil has appeared. But if they're leaving, the farewell banquet is the last chance to talk to Cesare. It would be nice to have a word with him before they leave. Before that, however, she must dance with Armand. And now they're so close again. Though G can't say she's particularly eager to see him. She can't even turn her head to dance with the Archduke. Cesare is hard to cross, and she hopes this dance will be over soon. Armand breaks the silence between them and says that this is an interesting experience for him. He always thought he didn't want to hear other people's thoughts, but now he wants it so much. Armand asks his fiancée what she is thinking about so hard that she can't concentrate on dancing with him. At that moment, G notices Cesare on the second-floor balcony. She decides to hurry up and pushes the Archduke away, telling him that she is not thinking about anything. The dance is over, so she will go. When she finally meets Cesare, the writer asks him to stop avoiding her and talk to her calmly. She asks him why he ignores her, not just because she rejected him, but because they had nothing to do if he decided to cut off the connection like that. The princess asks the cardinal to remain at least friends. Cesare replies that they just had different meanings for the relationship, so he decided that he would not side with the princess. For him, she is no longer a friend, nor can they remain so. After all, if she's around, thoughts of them somehow pairing up will still cross his mind. He's not good enough to pretend it never happened. G is sad that Cesare doesn't want to keep even a friendly relationship. He was one of the few people she cared about. He was someone she felt comfortable with. She wouldn't want to distance herself, but she can't hold on to him and go back to the old days. The princess replies to the cardinal that if he feels that way, there is nothing to be done and wishes him happiness. Cesare wishes her the same in return. G is startled by the screams. The devil has appeared right in the dance hall, and it's full of people. Cesare asks Her Highness to stay in a safe place. The writer thinks that if she also used divine power, they could do it faster, but she is bound to be spotted. It will be difficult to get out of this situation. Behind her, she hears a voice saying that they have met. Princess Yuto turns around. The priest informs her that he has come from the Pope and would like to know the answer to his offer to help him get rid of Armand. People are terrified. The devil consumes one by one. Armand orders the guards to inform the priest to gather in the ballroom. He searches the crowd for Iona, but because her thoughts are hidden from him, he cannot find her. The writer, meanwhile, continues to stand on the balcony with the priest. She wonders how Yuto ended up here and exactly when the devil appeared. Yuto tells the princess that it's very easy to say yes or no. G explains to the priest that she is not ready to answer. she needs more time to do so. Yuto replies that His Holiness would at least have him come back today with an answer. The princess is outraged that he would think such a thing during a devil attack. She has to make Yuto leave since she can't answer him anything. The priest tells the princess that there is nothing she can do and will leave, but she should consider that His Holiness cannot wait long. Ji wonders why the Pope wants to hear her answer so soon, and decides to think about it later as she has to deal with the devil. She hears screams outside. Leaning on the balcony partition, the writer sees that there is a devil in the garden too. There's more than one of these things, and they're gigantic. Compared to last time, there are many more of them. Even their size is different. People are scattering in different directions. If she's going to destroy them, she shouldn't be afraid of being exposed and put her power to the test. The people in the garden noticed that a bright flash lit up the sky and the devils disappeared. They are sure that it was God who came down from heaven to save them from the devil. Ji succeeds in getting rid of the devil, but she has spent too much energy and can't even move a finger. She falls down, but is caught by Armand. When she saw the Archduke, she wondered how he knew she was fainting and how he had caught her. The servants discuss among themselves rumors that a god has descended to earth. A palace maid says she witnessed it herself. It is night and bright as day. The legend also mentions a bright light. Armand comes to the princess's room and asks the doctor how Jonah is feeling. The doctor reports that they found no injuries, and it seems she was just exhausted from her encounter with the devil. Armand tells the doctor that he will keep an eye on her and that the maids can be called away. Sitting on his bride's bed, Armand puts his palm to her forehead and makes sure she has no fever. In his head, he hears whispers of comfort. A voice offers to cut to the chase and says he wanted Her Majesty to do him a favor. Armand recognizes the voice of the Pope and realizes that the princess is thinking of meeting him. But what favor is he talking about? The Pope's voice says that he would like Her Majesty to help him get rid of Armand. It was obvious to the writer from the beginning that she would not help the Pope with this. She could not understand the Pope's intentions, so she asked for time. If you think about it, the Pope could do it without her, so why would he need her? Ji recalls saying that His Holiness can't wait long for an answer. She immediately realized that the words about time constraints might be a lie. The Pope clearly needs help, otherwise why would the priest want to hear her answer so quickly? If she hid where the Pope would not find her, perhaps she could protect Armand. The princess opens her eyes and realizes that she has been unconscious all this time. Armand brings her breakfast and asks her to eat. Jo notes that the Archduke looks tired and assumes that he was watching over her while she slept. She tells him that she used divine power to get rid of the devil, but used more energy than she expected and passed out. Noticing that Armand does not react to this news as expected, she asks if he knew about it before her confession. The Archduke replies that he did not know that her divine power was so great. Armand apologizes to her for not telling her earlier because he was afraid she wouldn't like it. He used to hide a lot of things from her, but now it is different, and he wonders if she is hiding something from him. Ji remembers the Pope's request, but decides to keep silent about it, and replies that she has nothing to hide and everything is written on her face. She can't tell him about it, as she has to deal with it herself. Armand is about to leave, but the princess stops him to ask if Armand should still be in another building. He can't even go out, and that makes her sad. So she wants to know if she can go for a walk with him outside the castle. Ji notices that Armand looks like he wants to put a shade to her, but she would like to take a quiet walk outside. Armand lets her do what she wants, but asks her not to go too far, not beyond the capital anyway. Ji replies that that's enough. Michael informs Armand that Lavian Therese is waiting for him. When the Archduke's position as head of the Bonaparte family was precarious, he took advantage of Lavian's proliferation. He later began to keep his distance because of her over-obsession. Lavian tells His Excellency that she's been waiting for him. Armand suspects that this girl has not yet given up. Lavian thanks Bonaparte for making their own tea. Looking at the Archduke, she reflects on the fact that she came unannounced, but he is so nice to her. His superiority has not forgotten her. Armand reminds her that not long ago she had tea with Her Highness. Lavian replies that she did indeed, and when she learned that something happened on the way back, she was so worried. Armand asks the lady if she noticed anything strange that day. Lavian replies that she didn't see anything special and that they were just having tea. Eynard concludes that Lady Therese is not guilty, but at that moment he hears her thoughts that it was strange to her that the princess was fine even after drinking the poison. One day, G goes to the Star Castle to pick up Armand and suggests they go for a walk. It's starting to get dark early, so they better go right away. The Emperor asks his sister about whether he can really go. No one told him that. The princess explains to her brother that she got permission from His Excellency Eynard. She asks him not to worry about it and just follow her. The princess asks Armand if he remembers the hill where they used to play as children and from which they could see the sea. Armand adds that he remembers how they used to swing there under the branches of a tall tree. Jonah suggests that his brother go there again, as he can't even breathe. Said reports to the Archduke that he's found out what he's been talking about. A man died recently at the Teresian estate. The cause of death was poisoning. He asks His Excellency if he should stay with Her Highness. Eynard replies not to stay with the princess, as he needs to know more about the corpse. When Armand arrives at the hill, they notice that the place hasn't changed at all. Only the swings are broken. The princess decides to prepare everything for the picnic first. She didn't bring any of the servants with her, as she said it would be just the two of them. G is laying out the desserts she prepared this morning on the bedspread. Armand asks her sister Tom if she made it herself. The princess replies that she spent the whole morning in the kitchen. After tasting the desserts, the Emperor says that they are really delicious. He didn't know his sister could cook. The princess explains that she has not told anyone about it. The sun is almost set. Armand says that thanks to his sister, he had a really good time today. He came out of the palace and immediately felt so calm in his soul, he forgot about all his worries. He is worried about what he needs to do to establish a fair policy, how severe the winter cold will be, whether the citizens of the empire will have problems because of it. He's so worried, and he can't even do anything about it. The princess assures her brother that he will be an outstanding emperor. She suggests that Armand go back, as it will be dark when they get back. G pretends to have lost her earring and tells her brother that she will catch up with him when she finds it. Armand suggests that they go together after all. She replies that she will quickly manage to find it and asks him to wait for her on the hill. G runs to the bush where the cloak is hidden. She puts it on, thinking that she'll just disappear for a while so the Pope can't find her. She will hide where no one will look for her. Armand stands by the carriage, thinking that his sister is delayed. The guard greets His Majesty the Emperor and tells him that Her Highness Jonah was in another carriage. Armand is angry with the guard because he has been silent all the time and asks in whose carriage she left. Meanwhile, Eynard finds his fiancée and asks her about Tom, where she was in such a hurry, and whether she thought he didn't know she was going to run away. G finds herself locked in a room. She knocks on the door and asks to be let out immediately. When Eynard finds her, he leads her to his carriage, but they arrive not at the imperial palace, but at the Bonaparte estate. The princess asks Eynard if she is here and asks him to let her out so that she can return to the castle. The Archduke explains that he cannot let her out for her own good because the Pope has asked her to kill him. The girl asks him how he knew about it, since he can't read her thoughts. Eynard tells her that when she used up all her divine power, the block became unstable, and he could hear her thoughts. How a priest named Udo found her at the ball, how she decided to run away, and the reasons for that decision. However, he can't let her leave because she promised him that she would take responsibility for his life, and asks him to keep his word. He tells the princess that he must return to the castle, and if anything happens, Said will be there for her. A mysterious man in a cloak visits Prince Terezia. The prince asks him if he corrected those parcels. The man asks if he suspects him of anything. The prince replies that he does not suspect him in any way, but he has never visited him personally, so he is curious to know the reason for his visit. The man explains to the prince that there is nothing special and that he can trust him, and he believes that face-to-face communication will dispel his worries. Instead of a package, the man tells Mr. Therese that Princess Jonah has divine powers. The prince asks him if this information is all there is. It is known that the imperial family came from light, and of course they can all use divine power, so this information is not that important. The man in the cloak answers that only the person will depend on how the information will be used. Lavian overhears their dialogue. She doesn't know who the man is, but he looks like he knows what he's talking about. From this conversation, the lady deduced that the reason why Jonah survived after taking the poison. She had heard that priests with powerful divine powers can neutralize the poison. If Jonah is as strong and able to harness the power, maybe it was she who summoned that bright light that defeated the devil. There's no proof for that. Either way, the people will be on her side. Eynard returns to the manor late at night. A servant greets his master and tells him that the princess is in her room. The Archduke enters his bride's room and sees that she has fallen asleep, sitting by the door. He picks her up in his arms and puts her on the bed. Before leaving the room, Eynard asks her not to leave him alone. The next day, G wakes up from her bed and remembers that she is in Eynard's manor. But since there are no maids here, and if she is careful, she can get away. She walks out into the corridor and sees Said in front of her. He greets Her Majesty and tells her that if she wants to see the mansion, he will accompany her. Walking back into the room, G ponders how she can get away if Armand has a Said on him and why he brought her here. The reason is either because it's easier to keep an eye on her, or he thinks she doesn't trust him. Michael brings the Archduke the documents to be reviewed today. The festival of the founding of the empire is coming up, so there is much work to be done. He asks the Lord if it is a good decision to hold the festival so soon after the devil's attack. The festival of the founding of the empire is the largest festival held in Iclith and commemorates the expulsion of the devil from the lands by the power of light where the empire was later formed. If the devil were to appear at such a global celebration, the damage would be enormous. But it is because of the devil's appearance that they must hold a festival in honor of his banishment. Eynard assures Michael everything will be fine, so he asks him to try harder than ever before. A subordinate gives the Archduke a letter from the Emperor. Eynard arrives at the castle to visit the Emperor. Armand explains that the reason for his summons is that he would like to learn something from His Excellency, but as he himself knows, he cannot leave the confines of this palace. He has heard that the process carriage has not returned to the castle and that it is on its way to the Bonaparte estate. Eynard tells the Emperor that he cannot give him an answer, but assures him that Her Majesty is safe now. Armand is furious and replies to the Archduke that there is no place safer than the Imperial Palace. Eynard tells His Majesty that if the matter is over, he wishes to speak. As His Majesty knows, the founding festival of the Empire is about to begin, so the Emperor cannot continue to stay in this palace. He should move to the castle before the festival begins. He promises to make arrangements for his maids. Armand is surprised that the Archduke might want his throne back. He thought Eynard would leave him here forever. Eynard returns to his manor and asks the princess if she has been here the whole time he has been gone. G answers that she and Said have been exploring the manor, and there is nothing of interest here at all. She asks the Archduke how long she will have to stay here. She is very bored here. Eynard reminds the bride that he knows why she wanted to run away, decided it would be the best outcome, but must think logically. Given that the Yuto came out of nowhere, she is being watched and would have been found even with the cloak on. She's probably been watched before. There's no telling what else they'll do after seeing the princess escape. Even the Imperial Palace is not safe, and the manor would be the safest place for Her Majesty. Plus, Eynard doesn't want her to be harmed. He leaves the room as he has a lot of work to do and must return to the palace. The princess turns his words over in her head and realizes that Eynard was not angry with her at all, but just worried. Meanwhile, Cesare is outraged that this old man Pope doesn't read the reports. He's been asking Alexander for a long time to send more priests. If he's the Pope, he should pay more attention to the appearance of the devil. Because of what happened at the ball, the return to the church has been postponed. They should deal with the situation before they leave. During the devil's expansion, many priests were injured, and the survivors spent all their energy healing the wounded, so they need more people. The priestess Cecilia reports to the Cardinal that the lady has asked him for a date and is waiting for him outside. Cesare explains to Cecilia that he is terribly busy. At this time, the priest asks the lady to wait a little while. The Cardinal is visited by the daughter of the Teresia family, Lavian Lucia Teresia. Cesare asks the lady why such a valuable guest has come to see him. Lavian explains that she has an important conversation with him. She couldn't sleep a wink after she learned that Her Highness possesses vast stores of divine power. The divine power belongs to the church, so she thought it was her duty to meet him. The cardinal wondered to himself how she knew this. Perhaps someone had told her, but why she had come to him. Cesare said to the lady with a wave of his hands that he could not be sure of her words. When he was teaching Her Highness lessons, he felt only a faint response of divine power. Since that moment, and not much time had passed, the amount of her power couldn't have increased so quickly. The power couldn't suddenly appear or disappear. However, he was nevertheless intrigued as to who had told her such a thing and why she had decided to come to him. Lavian is puzzled that the cardinal is so calm. Even if he pretends this information isn't important, it could be bad for the church. Most likely, the cardinal wants to hear the truth. Standing up from her seat, Lady granted that thought from the position of the church, so she thought it was important and she had to meet with him. But apparently the cardinal doesn't take her words seriously. She is forced to bow out and yet boldly hopes that the church will make a wise decision. Cesare doesn't know how the lady knows this, but it's clear that Jonah may be in trouble. The princess, with her face buried in her pillow, tells Eynard that she understands why he says that the imperial palace is dangerous, but that having to stay at home for a week is so depressing. Eynard reminds G that she can go out into the garden again. The girl explains that's not the point. She can't talk to him. He is constantly with the palace, Said is silent, and the maids are careful about talking to her, because she is from the imperial family. G misses Armand and Dorothy very much. She simply asks Eynard to at least allow Lavian to be invited here. It would be wonderful to see her. The Archduke flatly refuses to fulfill this request and explains that she should not meet anyone while he is not around and needs to wait a bit. The festival is about to start and they have to attend a few soirees. There is also a festival of light and they will go to it together. G answers Eynard that they should not go there together, because if they go out in public, there will be a lot of noise around. Then he will constantly hear other people's thoughts, and it will be very difficult for him. Eynard assures his fiancée that everything will be fine if he concentrates on her. It doesn't matter that he can't read her thoughts. Jo is actually curious about the festival she has created, so she agrees to go there together. Eynard smiles at this answer and tells her that now he has to go to the palace. G noticed that smile on his face. She had seen Eynard smile a couple times, but now he looked really happy. Time has passed and the day of the biggest festival of the Eclit Empire is coming. Meanwhile, the Pope looks through the letters and finds one that says that the devil has appeared in the Eclit Empire and the Cardinal is direct to send more people. Apparently, after arriving, the priests are charged to return. Despite the report, he finds it hard to believe in the devil, and it would be best to investigate. Although the divine power that the elders write about probably belongs to the princess, it is worth at least pretending to investigate. The Pope calls the priest Birch to him and says he trusts him most of all. Alexander knows the priest has long wanted to visit the Eclit Empire, so he suggests he go there. Birch is going to go there now, but the Pope tells him that there is no need to hurry. Cesare will have to wait anyway. Besides, if he's to go as a representative of the church, Birch must be at least a cardinal. He will have to prepare for the ceremony of becoming a cardinal, and asks him to go to the Eclit as soon as they are done with it. Alexander counts on the priest and asks him to do his best. The Archduke and the princess arrive at the ball. G says she can't understand the aristocrats. What's the point of having balls and soirees all through the festival? Eynard replies that there is nothing to be done, as it is an important event, and the princess cannot ignore it. Armand notices his sister and asks her if she is all right. He has not heard from her since their last meeting. He wonders where she has been all this time. The princess replies to his brother that she is fine and nothing has happened. Eynard wishes His Majesty eternal prosperity for the Eclit Empire. He tells him she would like to speak with him and asks for a moment. Armand suggests we talk here since the evening has just begun. Eynard tells the Emperor that they want to have a wedding ceremony after the festival. Her Highness is often in trouble, and as her fiancé, he cannot turn a blind eye. After the ceremony, he will be able to fully protect Jonah, so he hopes for the emperor's blessing. G resents Eynard for making such a loud statement. Armand is curious to know what the Archduke is thinking. So suddenly he's talking about marriage, even though he knows he can't let it happen. People are discussing how amazing Archduke Bonaparte is and seems to actually love Her Highness. When Armand hears this, he realizes he's lost. He can't refuse them in such a setting and needs to buy time. The emperor replies to Eynard that he is happy to hear this on such an important day and offers to discuss all the details at the end of the festival. G tells Eynard he's awfully cunning. First day of the festival and he's already announced the wedding. Everywhere you look, the big topic of discussion is their wedding. Every soiree you have to answer a lot of questions. The number of people in the audience has gotten bigger and bigger every time, and it's exhausting. A few days later, Eynard comes by to pick up his fiancée and asks her if she is ready. G replies that she is always ready to go out. The Archduke notices that she is having a lot of fun, to which the princess replies that it can't be any other way. Finally stopped having balls, and today they are going to the Festival of Lights. The princess has put up with it all just for this day. She reminds Eynard that they are now very popular in society, and if they go out, they will definitely attract a lot of attention. So she has chosen simple clothes to avoid attracting a lot of attention, but she has a plan to hide even more. The princess managed to change their hair color the first time. She was afraid it wouldn't work, but it was easier than she thought. G remembered that Cesare changed his hair color with divine power, but she didn't expect it to work so well. She asks Eynard about Tom if he's okay since there are a lot of people here. Even though he says he's fine, the princess thinks he'll get tired if he concentrates on her for so long. G suggests that Eynard has a lot of fun. Compared to those dull balls, the festival is better. She has bought presents for her maid Dorothy and for Armand. They pass a jewelry counter. The princess asks the seller if it is true that they have divine power. The woman confirms this and explains that because of this, they can glow and change color. The princess clarifies that shouldn't they be expensive? Because of this answer, the princess assumes that this is the first time the lady is attending their festival and tells her that on this day, they reduce their prices. Eynard explains the low prices by saying that real priests train to use divine power, and she just sells the results, so it's not expensive. The seller tells them that she thinks they are together, so she will lower the price. Young people often take it before a wedding, and they look like newlyweds. Eynard suggests they move on soon as they haven't looked at everything. Eynard and G climb the hill overlooking the capital. The girl notices that the view is truly beautiful and thanks the Archduke for an interesting evening. She asks why he suggested coming here, as she remembers that he likes such places. Eynard explains that he just wanted to see her smile. Looking up at the sky, they watch the meteor shower, the most beautiful part of the festival. G didn't know it would be so amazing here. Eynard gives the princess the bracelet from the shop and says that she is not weak enough to worry about him. He is not fooled by the Pope's traps and can protect her from him, so he asks her to be near him. It is strange to hear this before the wedding, but the princess agrees to it and says that he is in charge of her life from now on. The sky lit up with fireworks to conclude the day of the Festival of Lights. Before the festival is over, however, they are all caught up in the shocking news. Cardinal Berha informs the emperor that in the middle of the festival, the day before he left the church, His Holiness the Pope was beheaded. Because of this strange death, the hunting competition that usually closes the festival was cancelled. G thought they had to defeat the Pope for the story to end, but now with his death, there is no telling how the novel will end.